Good evening. Welcome to the regular meeting of the Brisbane Planning Commission, Thursday, February 26, 2015, 7:30 p.m., the regular meeting in Brisbane City Hall.
Commissioner Cunningham?
Present.
Doe?
Present.
Munir?
Here.
Parker?
Here.
Reinhardt?
Here.
Adoption of the agenda. Somebody like to...
I motion that we adopt the agenda.
Do we have a second?
I second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We are moving on to the approval of draft action minutes, and we're now grouping these as a regular. Do I read them all off as they are? Okay. Approval of draft action minutes. Number 1, April 24, 2014 regular meeting. Item number 2, May 22nd, 2014 regular meeting. Item 3, January 8, 2015 regular meeting. And item 4, January 22nd, 2015 regular meeting. Any comments?
I was not present for January 22nd meeting.
Any other comments?
The
None.
rest of them are okay.
All right. Somebody like to make a motion to approve draft action minutes?
I make a motion to approve the draft action minutes.
In toto, right? Mm-hmm. All in favor? Second? Sorry.
I second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. We now move on to oral communications, which is a total of 15 minutes for anything that is not on this evening's agenda. Is there anybody who would like to speak on an item that is not on our agenda this evening? I don't see any hands, and we don't have any written communication that people would like to speak. We're good to move on. Looks like it is. Those are oral communications. Written communications. I do have one letter that has now been tabled for a workshop at the next regular meeting of 3/12. We have very many letters from the community relative to items that are on this evening's agenda. I also have something from Sustainable San Mateo County, the Bay Area Monitor, the Western City Quarterly, and nothing else. Does anybody else have any written communications?
No.
No.
Moving on to item H, old business, which is a public hearing at 786 Humboldt Road, variance V-3-14, a variance to allow for a lot line adjustment between the existing buildable vacant lots at 786 and 788 Humboldt Road to 1, reduce the lot width of 786 Humboldt Road to approximately 37.5 feet, where 50 feet would otherwise be required, and 2, to reduce the lot area of 786 Humboldt Road to 4,244 square feet, where 5,000 square feet would be required. David Bostrom is the applicant owner, APN 007-432-320. Note, this item was continued from January 22nd, 2000 Planning Commission meeting. Commissioners Reinhardt and myself will recuse ourselves from the deliberations on this item, and we will leave. And we will pass this on to Commissioner Doe to take care of this, including comments. Thank you very much. We'll see you when we're done.
The applicant requests a variance to the lot width and lot area standards for 786 Humboldt Road to allow for a lot line adjustment between this and the adjacent 788 Humboldt Road site. This would be to reduce the lot width of 786 Humboldt Road to approximately 37.5 feet, where 50 feet would otherwise be required. Also to reduce the lot area to approximately 4,200 square feet, where 5,000 square feet would be required. The purpose is to equalize the width of these two lots to allow the width of 788 Humboldt Road to be enlarged from its current width of 25 feet to approximately 37.5, and increase the lot area of this substandard sized lot. This would be to allow for a more even development pattern and less crowding of future development. I'll provide a brief outline of the background on these two sites, followed by the applicant's proposal and staff's recommendation. By way of background, in 1908, the City of Visitation subdivision map created 3 lots that make up the subject sites, and each were 25 feet wide by at least 100 feet deep. In 1932, a house was built at the center of these 3 lots. Its address was 784 Humboldt Road. Then in 1969, the city adopted an ordinance establishing a new standard lot size of 5,000 square feet as a minimum. Contiguous substandard lots that were owned in common were then subject to merger. As an exception to within the ordinance, it established that any substandard lot created through a parcel map would be recognized as a standard site. In April 1973, a parcel map was recorded recognizing one of the original subdivision lots, along with part of the lot to the rear that used to belong to a Kings Road site, as a separate buildable parcel, although it did not meet the 5,000 square foot lot area requirement. So this lot is subject to the exception provision in the 1969 ordinance. In August 2014, just last year, the city issued a building permit for the demolition of the existing single-family home, and the home was subsequently demolished. In September of last year, the city approved an application to establish 2 new addresses for the 2 vacant lots, to identify them now as 786 and 788 Humboldt Road. That brings us up to the present with this variance application. This table we could come back to. I'll show the slides or the graphic for now, the 3 possibilities here. So the applicant has proposed that the existing nonconformity of the lot size for 788 Humboldt Road would essentially be exchanged between the 2 lots, and the width would be equalized between the 2 lots. So neither lot would have a conforming width. The reason for this proposed trade and nonconformity for the lot size is due to the uneven shape of the front and rear lot lines, while trying to achieve equal widths between the 2 lots. As previously stated, the applicant has indicated that the objective is to allow for a more regular pattern of development and less crowding than the narrow 25-foot wide lot would afford. So the proposal would make 786 Humboldt Road nonconforming for both the lot width and size, while 788 Humboldt would become conforming for lot size, and although wider, 788 would remain still nonconforming for its width. Staff has provided an alternative which would maintain a higher level of conformity with city requirements than the applicant's proposal. However, it would still require a variance for the lot width on 786 Humboldt Road, but it would not reduce the lot size below the minimum of 5,000 square feet. The applicant's proposal and staff's alternative are shown, again, they're shown graphically here. So the far left, you have the current configuration with the currently conforming lot shown in blue, and the kind of brownish orangish color is the non-conforming lot of 788 Humboldt, so 786 is in blue. The center image is the applicant's proposal, which would even out the widths of the 2 lots, but because of the uneven frontage and rear property lines, it ends up putting the 786, the right-hand lot, into that non-conforming situation for, the blue would become non-conforming, 786, and 788 gains conformity for its lot area. It would become 5,000 square feet, so an exchange essentially there. And then staff's alternative on the far right would keep the 5,000 minimum on the 786 site in blue and would increase the width of 788 somewhat, essentially up to 31 feet versus the 25 that it now has. The findings required for the Commission to grant a variance are detailed in the agenda report and shown on this slide. Staff's comments related to the findings are, first, the proposal would not provide for any increased housing density, nor would it allow for an overall increase in the gross building floor area or lot coverage for the two lots, since there is no net loss or gain in acreage between the two. So it would not grant a special privilege. If the variance were denied, it would unnecessarily impose a lack of space and a sense of crowding from the future development of these lots. If approved, the increased width would provide for design flexibility and is consistent with several of the other nonconforming lots on this block of Humboldt Road. Staff feels that these findings could be made with the more modest lot line adjustment as provided in staff's alternative. It should also be noted that by allowing for an increased width on 788 Humboldt Road, the parking requirement would be increased. So while the potential gross combined floor area for the two home sites would not increase, the required parking would be required. That would be required for the development of these two sites would increase from 6 to 7 spaces. And one last added benefit of granting the variance would be a slight reduction in the potential gross floor area that may be developed on the two sites, and that assumes that they build to the maximum. We don't know that at this point. This is due to a floor area exception allowed for 788 Humboldt Road, since its site area is less than 3,700 square feet, and that essentially an exclusion up to 200 square feet is allowed for garages on such small lots. So that would be a 200-foot reduction if the variance were granted in terms of potential gross floor area. In summary, the overall result of the variance and the subsequent lot line adjustment would be to introduce a nonconforming lot width to 786 Humboldt Road. If you choose staff's alternative as indicated in the resolution, or as proposed by the applicant, it would be both the lot line and area. And this would help alleviate some of the potential future development impacts related to space and crowding from the adjacent 788 Humboldt Road site. In closing, staff recommends approval of variance V314, the adoption of the resolution with the recommended conditions of approval.
Okay, shall we open it up? Or do you want to?
Can we ask questions of the staff first?
Sure. Ask questions of the staff?
Yeah, the condition of approval, number 1 is the one that you're talking about, the revised lot line, right? A1.
Let me find my way there.
Yeah. So your recommendation is not for what the applicant is asking, but your revised recommendation.
That's correct.
Okay.
Could I have more information on your thinking of your recommendation?
So the thinking here was that we could, with a 31-foot wide lot, that it would allow enough space to be more workable, essentially, and not so much of a burden in terms of space, but at the same time would be less of a reach, if you will, because you're granting a variance then for just the lot line and not the lot line and the area of the lot. So in this case, in the applicant's proposal, you're essentially flipping the nonconformity over to a completely different lot in terms of the area, and so this it's a little less far-reaching in that respect. That being said, it's at the Planning Commission's discretion whether you want to, if you see fit, to make findings for the applicant's proposal. That is an alternative to you. We just need to make the findings for that.
Any other questions for the staff?
No.
No.
So with the widening of the roads, I've gone up and looked. How much space is there to be able to widen the roads? I mean, where does this property line start, and where does we see a road, and then we see this lot that's empty. Where is the property line actually? If we're going to widen the road,
I don't have a measure of where the survey is exactly relative to the road. I know the road is quite narrow there. It's about 10 feet in terms of its aisle width. Current road standards call for 20 feet as an aisle width, plus 8 feet on one side for parallel parking, and if there's parking on both sides, it would be plus 16 feet then.
and there's enough room that is won't encroach on the property of the applicant to be able to make a 28 feet?
Let me go to a slide. If this is, I don't know if that's readable. Let's see if I... Bear with me just a second, and I'll look at what the public right-of-way width is there. That should be shown on these assessor's maps. So. Do you have there? 40? So the public right-of-way is actually 40 feet. So presumably the lot line starts a good share back from the curb cut, but it's hard to say that the road would be centered exactly within that 40-foot right-of-way. So this would be something that through the building permit process, the city engineer would look at and impose requirements on the building permit to widen the street to the city's requirements. So that would be under the city engineer's purview.
So there's actually 40 feet
40 feet right-of-way.
right away.
But the actual paved area currently is about 17, 18 feet.
So it looks, and I spoke with you earlier today, it looks as though there's been a lot of erosion on the hill. Do you have any information about the topography or why there was so much erosion, or was there?
I have not had a chance to speak with the city engineer since we talked about any existing erosion concerns, but again, part of the building permit application would be a geotechnical investigation, soils report, and structural engineering to make sure that any home that's built on either of these sites is properly built into the hillside and stabilizes that slope.
So what you're saying is if there is some pre-existing erosion that at this point when they go to build, then they would rectify that before they would build? Is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm sure that the city engineer would that would be part of his look at this, is essentially there's going to be a grading plan before and after, as well as the geotechnical work, so yes. And I can also bring this, I can highlight this concern for the city engineer as well, so there's advance notice of your concern.
And I still am a little confused about the staff alternative. What was your thinking in your proposal for the lot sizes again?
So again, a 25-foot wide lot essentially forces a house to be,
Skinny.
if you will, kind of extending, elongating up the hillside, and resulting in a sense of crowding on the adjacent 786 site, the subject site. And staff felt that just enlarging it to 31 feet, an extra 6 feet, gives enough room to more reasonably accommodate the build out of that parcel without going so far as to completely flip the size of the lots between those two lots.
Okay.
I think essentially, you look at it, you just flipped one with the other again.
Right.
Right.
Like
but,
786 now is your 788.
right.
Basically
But while
that.
still requiring a variance because of those lot lines in the front and rear because of the width issue.
But for 788, you are actually making it less wide, 31 feet, versus what the applicant is talking about, 37.52.
Right. So in a way, it's
it's
kind of a
more
compromise between
Not-
what the
Not
applicant.
narrower, though.
Pardon me.
It's narrower than what the applicant is
Correct.
asking. At the same time, if you look at the 786, there's not much of a difference between what applicant is suggesting and what you have, 44 versus 37.48.
Mm-hmm.
So
This might be a good question for the applicant. I know, well, not the current applicant, but I understand this property's in escrow now, and the potential owner has expressed some concern to staff since the report came out about staff's recommendations. So he may want to talk to you specifically about his concerns.
But I really don't understand the reason for staff's alternate proposal here. What are we gaining by doing that?
Yeah.
I think part of the issue is, right now we have one conforming lot and one non-conforming lot. That's the pre-existing condition. And our goal with this was not to flip-flop and make a conforming lot non-conforming. Our goal was to reduce the amount of non-conformity of the existing non-conforming lot without impacting the conformity of the previously conforming lot.
Yeah, but the thing is, if you look at it, 786 with your alternate 44 feet is still non-conforming, right? You need 50 feet. And also 788 is non-conforming also, 31 feet.
Right.
So you're not doing anything here substantially to make one conforming versus the other.
In a way, it reduces the nonconformity for 788 because you're adding both square footage to it as well as you're adding width to it. So it's less nonconforming, if you will. But yeah.
But then you're making 788 conforming in the terms of area, 5,000 square feet versus 4244. So you're flipping, and I still don't see the reason for your alternate recommendation here. Unless there is a reason behind the topography or something that you want to do this. But if you want to see the numbers here, it doesn't make any sense to me to flip it like that.
So if you were to set it side by side, the alternative proposal along with, next to the applicant's proposal. Could you give us the pros and cons for each?
We'll go back to a,
Right.
actually, let me go to this slide, and this is in your packet as well, so there's a lot of information on this, so it's a bit hard to read, and especially for those in the back row. I know it's hard for me to read from here, but essentially you have, so 786 is the middle grouping, and you have the existing lot configuration as a column there, the applicant's proposal, and staff's alternative. And so, and then 788 in the far right with the same setup. And this kind of outlines a little bit what the advantages, if you will. You have setbacks that are increased somewhat with staff's proposal over what's currently required for 788. So instead of 3 feet, it would go to 3'7". Staff's proposal, though, for 786 would take it from 5 feet down to 4.4. So those are the side setbacks. The applicant's proposal would put each of the setbacks at 3.7. So in a way, it leaves a little more setback on 786, which currently has the 5-foot setback. So that's one advantage, if you will, and not going as far in terms of nonconformity for the 786 lot. But I think I go back to this idea of 25 feet is a very narrow lot, especially given the steep topography, and this is a deep lot, so they can still fit a fairly sizable house on it and extend it back up into the lot, and so giving it an extra 6 feet to work with, I think makes a substantial difference in the sense of crowding that would impose on the 786 lot, as well as what it would impose potentially on the lot to the other side, which we haven't really discussed as not part of the application, but it so it gives a little extra room on either side. So that's an advantage.
Which side are you speaking of? The one 790 or?
So I'm talking about the 788 site, the setbacks that it goes from 3 to 3.7 on the applicant's proposal, 3.1 on staff's proposal, but it essentially gives a more wiggle room in terms of 6 extra feet in which to, in terms of the width of the lot in which to design that home, and so presumably not extending quite as deep up into the lot as the current proposal.
But then it makes it very difficult for 788 is 3.1 foot, 3.1 feet now with your proposal. So
yeah, so you get some width, but it's still fairly.
With the applicant proposal is a 3.7 both ways. It makes a lot more compromise, better compromise than going to a very reduced 3.1.
Right.
For 788.
So this is really up to the Planning Commission if it finds that the applicant's proposal is a preferred alternative.
Now these are non-conforming lots, so when they come for the application, it has to be reviewed again with the Planning Commission or what? Because
I'm sorry.
No.
For the actual lot line adjustment.
Yeah, but also the variance, in terms of
Well, this is the
This
variance.
is the lot-
Once
this is
once the
what-
variance is
Yeah.
approved,
I
the
got
lot
it.
line adjustment is an administrative
Okay, I got it, yeah.
process, so.
Thanks.
For the remaining non-conforming lots, are there any lots that are 25 feet wide? And how is that, do we have any model or anything to look at, to visualize? One that has similar topography and all of those accompanying issues.
So you're talking about existing homes on 25-foot wide lots?
Yes.
Well, there's a number of those throughout central Brisbane, given the original subdivision. There is one just at 796. I didn't bring images or anything of that, but I think it's an opportunity here to look at this site with fresh eyes and do what the city sees as the best thing given the circumstances we have. You know, ideally these would be both 5,000 square feet lots with 50 feet of width, and so we wouldn't be having a discussion. But so we have a number of sites throughout town where there are homes built on these narrow lots, and it poses challenges.
Mm-hmm. So why are we keeping this requirement then? Why can't we just grandfather out all those 25-foot homes? Because every time they have to come for lot.
Through the chair, I might want to suggest you open the public hearing and before you enter your deliberations on this matter.
Correct.
Yeah, I think the reason we were asking is we want to clarify from the staff what the recommendation is, and also what the existing planning requirements are. So that's why we were asking all these questions.
Right.
Anyhow.
Because I wanted to make sure that the understanding the alternative proposal has actually taken into account all these other issues that I'm sure the public has already thought about. But we can go ahead and open the public hearing. So we have 3 requests here. Would Lori Laksamana come up?
Should we hear from the builder first?
I do have one other request that Mr. Hendricks' letter be read into.
Could you come up front?
Sure.
I'm sorry.
Again, my request at first, before I speak, is that Mr. Hendricks' letter, which is in there, has been stamped and when it was received. I would like that read into the public record, and also so the public could hear what Mr. Hendricks has to say due to another engagement. He had to go, a family engagement down south. So asking that first, can that be done? Or?
Would that be something that we do now at this point, or would we hear people who are present first? Okay, we can, at your request. Ray, 788 and 786 Humboldt Road, Brisbane, California, 94005. City of Brisbane Planning Commission and Building Department. Received February 17, 2015, dated the same. I am Wayne Hendricks, and I live at 790 Humboldt Road, here in Brisbane. I have lived in my home since 1988, and I have been a property and business owner in Brisbane since 1972. I am on a family vacation from February 20th through February 27th, and so this letter is regarding the proposed for-profit development next door to my house at 788 and 786 Humboldt Road, Brisbane. I want to thank the council and the city for the opportunity to voice my opinion on a for-profit project not only in my neighborhood, but right on my setbacks and property line. My house was built in 1964, and the original survey shows the old house across all 3 lots of a very nice building site. My house conforms to current setback regulations, and I would ask that any and all proposals maintain the same or greater setbacks my house was required to go by, meaning minimum 5 feet from property line with a 75 feet wide building site. The setbacks could be even more gracious with room for air, light, and trees. I have outlined what I consider valid points for all of our consideration and ask that you please read my entire letter into this discussion and record onto the public record. My points are: 1. This property is now and has been a single-family parcel. It has had one home built upon all 3 lots for about 100 years and continues to be a fine single-family building site and does not need one single variance for anything, parking setbacks, nothing. 2. I have a question for our esteemed council and the building department. In early 2009, an owner of a property on 242 Monterey Street was refused a demolition permit because he didn't have approved sets of plans submitted. My question is, where are the approved set of plans for this property? And if none, why were the current for-profit owners granted this very same demo permit? Number 3, I don't want a single variance granted on this property or project. We have very good regulations in place now, and there is no reason to invalidate or compromise any of them on a fine lot like this at 75 feet by 100 feet. Number 4, regarding the 25 feet parcel, in quotes, in 1973, a for-profit contractor, Ron Olson, was realigning several parcels on Kings Road and somehow snagged this lot separation. Soon after, he dug the huge hole right on the edge of our property line and was run off by Betty Schott, S-H-O-T-T, the owner-builder of my home, but by then, the damage was done. From then until now, this really steep slice into the natural contour has continually eroded my foundation. I have taken steps to protect my foundation, but I have asked the current and any future owners to restore stability called coterminous support and restore the original grade, which can be readily seen across the front of this existing 75 feet parcel in question. Number 5, Ray, dividing up the site. This stretch of Humboldt Road has predominantly 50 feet building sites, and I hope this council would be persuaded to maintain and encourage this existing precedence. Number 6, building on a 25-foot lot, a parcel/lot, I know of at least 2 precedents refusing this permission. 1, Herb Arcero, A-R-C-E-R-O, owner of exactly the same type of parcels, directly across the street from this parcel in question, has repeatedly been refused permits to build on the 25-foot portion. He was told by the building department, since he owns 3 lots, he can and should build on all 3. And 2, Rick Howell, H-O-W-L-E, an honorable police officer here in Brisbane, forever, and now still doing consulting work for our city, was twice refused a building permit on a 25-foot lot he owns, adjacent and separate to a home he owns on Sierra Point. The reason was the same. He owns the adjacent parcel. So here are at least 2 precedents for maintaining the integrity of a very lovely building site in our neighborhood. Number 7, 25 feet continued. Building on such a narrow lot presents many challenges: adequate parking spaces, enough storage for toys, surfboards, motorcycles, camping gear, bicycles, garbage cans, etc. Most 25-foot lots have their garbage cans out front, because where else? And I remember that is on our, I think there's a typo here, one of our city regulations. So all this means more cars on a very crowded street where we can only park on one side of the street now, a very common problem here, which could be eased by maintaining the existing 75-foot building site. At the last meeting, which I attended, the applicant for the parcel map change and associated variances was not even present. Is he here now? If not, why not? At the last meeting, a fellow with his wife and 2 kids introduced himself as my new neighbor. We talked for a little while, and he said he is a contractor and wants to build 2 houses, sell one, and live in the other. I drove by his equipment yard, and boy, oh boy, this man is a very serious contractor indeed. Lots and lots of heavy equipment, so excavating will not be a problem. The sign on the lot states, sale pending, so the new fella apparently does not own the site yet. So it sounds like his offer is contingent on this realignment and division and selling and making money. And one has to wonder, is there any guarantee he will indeed actually live there or here? I think this is a reasonable question. This is already a nice single-family building site. There are a few parcels just below me, 4 lots wide, with nice homes, big yards, fruit trees, parking, all the lovely rural aspects that drew every one of us here to love and appreciate Brisbane. And it is up to us to perpetuate these values and resist every attempt to cram in every inch possible, so another developer can wring out extra money by paving every square inch of dirt. It's up to us. Let's make our grandkids proud. Thank you, Wayne Hendricks.
Thank you for that. My name is Lori Laxamana, a Brisbane resident. My concern about this project is there has been other projects in town where they want to move a lot line and they weren't allowed to be able to do the same thing that this project wants to get done. One was on Mendocino, one was actually up the street on Humboldt. I couldn't give you addresses. I could tell you the people that owned them. Alzeman was one on the Mendocino. I have actually built a house following all your rules, and then the rules changed in the middle of the stream. It was very difficult for me, but we adjusted and we got our house built. My concern is it's not so much if they could build a house on 25 feet and a nice house on the other side. When you take it, the cost of buying a home in Brisbane now, the home on the 50-foot wide lot will be anywhere between 1.3 and 1.6 million. The home on the other side will be roughly, if you did the 25-foot lot, would be somewhere between 8 and a million, roughly, depending on what you put into the house. But having two wider houses, even though of moderate size, you would be able to get the same 1.3 to 1.6. So that gives the applicant a lot more advantage of getting more money. If he states that we're going to live in one and build the other, they're going to make more money by building a bigger house. So I just don't think that's fair. There's been other people wanting to move lot lines. And, again, the 25-foot thing has been there. You guys have made variances to keep having it. And so you got to deal the hand that you're dealt. And the hand that you're dealt is the 25-foot on one side and whatever the number is on the other one. I personally say if you can build a 25-foot lot, you should be able to. They make adjustments. I didn't get to take 200 feet off of my parking in my garage, but I still built the two-car garage. I had to widen the street. It said minimum 20 feet, but all of a sudden it jumped to 28 feet. So my driveway is steeper than it should have been because everything was already set up. Deal with what you have, and what you have is a 25-foot lot and the other one, and that's what should be there. Thank you.
I'm sorry, what is your address?
230 Humboldt Road. Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Would Donovan Gilliland, I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name, from 786 Humboldt Road, step forward? Thank you.
Yeah, my name's Donovan Gillen. I'm the prospective buyer for the properties, and the applicant's proposal for having both of the lot lines the same width was something that to do the future development on the property that I was really in favor of doing, as opposed to the staff's alternative, which I've talked to the staff, and he kind of says he's on the fence either way. You've got lots that when they were created were only 25 feet wide, and trying to now get them as conforming as possible is the challenge. So the proposed does get one lot at 5,000 square feet and both parcels at 37 feet. What the proposed also does is it's going to allow me to build two-car garages on each property, as opposed to the staff's alternative, which would only allow for a one-car garage due to the narrow width of the proposal of 31 feet. By the time you take into account the setbacks, you're left with only a one-car garage, as opposed to each lot being able to have two-car garages on each parcel. Another problem with the staff's alternate is the topography of the property directly to the east side is very steep, a very steep incline to the east, and the house to the east is built really close to the property line, whereas the house on the west side is built significantly further away from the property line. So having each parcel wider, and if you are going to choose one over the other to be at the 5,000 square feet, it really does need to be the lot on the east side. It's going to need the bigger setbacks when it comes to building, or there's going to be some substantial, underpinning and retaining wall costs that's going to make the development of that lot very difficult. So for the parking reasons, the existing topography and the setbacks of the existing houses to the east, the original proposal at each lot being at 37 feet and the 5,000 square foot conforming lot in parcel size, be the east lot, works the best for the development and to also for keeping the houses, like the staff said, from being built too far deep into the hillside.
I have a question. Now, there's two proposals here. There's yours and the staff's. Off-site parking. If we go with yours, then how much off-site parking would there be?
We talked to the you've got two lots here. So
Right.
when we do whatever configuration we're doing, the Planning Commission's already said we need to do the street widening. So that's going to be done, and that was a concern earlier on. We're going to be widening the street either 4 feet on my side and 4 feet on the undeveloped property directly opposite, or all 8 feet on the uphill side. One or the other will be developed, depending on, once it's surveyed, where that 40-foot right-of-way is in relation to the existing curb and gutter. But as a condition of approval, the staff's already said that we're going to have to widen the street 8 feet in order to, as a condition of being able to build on the property.
Okay, my question is, how much off-site parking would there be?
Two cars off-site, 4 cars on-site, 2 in the garage, 2 in the driveway.
In both lots?
Yes, ma'am. So the proposal would actually have more parking on-site than the staff's alternative, just due to the 31-foot proposed lot. By the time you have your setbacks, you're only wide enough for a 1-car garage. So you'll have more parking. You'll have more parking on site with the proposed application as opposed to the alternate.
So for clarification, can you tell me which property, is it 790 and 770, one on either side, which one is too close to the property?
Well, the
Right.
setbacks to the parcel to the east, or next to the brown lot, are very close, and elevation-wise, it's significantly higher. So having the narrow lot be on the east side is going to create not only challenges. You've got a narrow lot that's too thin for a 2-car garage, as opposed to it would have to be a 1-car garage with the narrow lot. You've also going to have more setback issues with the narrow lot because of the elevation difference between the two parcels. So the parcel directly to the east is significantly higher in elevation and very close to the property as well.
Okay, I'm looking at it the wrong way. So
It's got a big north arrow on it. Just got to do the northeast, west, south, and you can see what they call.
I wish I were good at these things.
But the parcel to the west side is fairly far away from the existing property line.
So that would be the parcel, because I'm a little slow here. That would be the 890 or
the parcel. I don't know the addresses of the adjacent property, but we the higher lot.
790. Excuse me.
Yeah, 790. I would imagine it's a higher number. Is fairly close to the property line. So when we do the development on the property, we want to maintain a greater setback to the east side of the parcel. Since that house is already built so close, we want to stay as far away from that as we can. And the further away I'm able to stay, the retaining wall work or underpinning work that may be necessary would be reduced. And the as far as the sizing goes, the proposed lot line adjustment, you still have one of the lots being at 5,000 square feet. It's just the lot on the east instead of the lot on the west. So, but you do get a greater parking space, and you do get each lot being greater width, and they're actually the same width, the same 37.5 feet wide, as opposed to one lot being only 31 and the other one only being 44.
Do you have any questions?
No.
No. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Would Peter Rockrath, is that right? From 786 Humboldt. Please step forward. Ken, is it possible to put that up on screen or no?
It's just a picture of what the property looked like 3 years ago. Hello, Commissioners. I'm a neighbor, and I've been in that part of Brisbane for quite a while. And I'm having a hard time with looking at what went down quickly when 2 years ago there's a for sale sign out, and the address is 784 Humboldt Road. And this property sells. I guess what I am is I'm a dollar short and a day late. That's clear because we're talking lot lines. I don't even know what you're talking about necessarily. But I don't understand how that piece of property could have had an address for, I think Mr. Hendricks said, 100 years. 784, somebody buys it, and they call it 786 and 788. And all of a sudden it's two parcels, and both of them parcels are not conforming with the 5,000 square feet. The other aspect, when we go down the street in Brisbane, 80% of those properties are on two parcels, two lots, maybe more than 80% of them. The ones I've seen, the aspect of where I have been around, there's something wrong with this. Do we have to see something from the Planning Commission when we divide these pieces of dirt? Is that a fair question? Or do you understand my question? And again, I'm 2 years dated. I hardly know what's going on. I don't understand how that piece of property right there turned into two sites. And its tax base and all of that other stuff, for 100 years it had a APN number of whatever it was, and now it's got two APN numbers. How do you do that? Did they come before you people? I know I couldn't have bought that piece of property from Ron Davis and put two lots in there and divided it out. Wouldn't have happened.
Well, that actually is a question that's come up several times. Can anybody give us some information on the process that has this been done before? Where we're hearing that other properties are not going to be granted or have not been granted the ability to build on a 25-foot lot, and now this particular property was demolished before there was a plan. Is there a change in the way the city or the codes, or is there?
If I could, very quickly, from living up there as long as I've lived up there and what I have seen, there are certainly other properties, but they're far and few between. I lived at a property, and it was 775 Humboldt Road. There it sits 25 feet, 100 feet back. When that property was built in 1955, I don't know this for a fact, but I'd wager something on it. I'm not much of a gambler. The parcel right next door to it was tied to that thing, and the builder came right out to the line, put the house up, and then now it's changed to RCO this and something else that, and it's all moved around a little bit again. And the two parcels that are next to this 25-foot front at 775 Humboldt are now parcels and a half as buildable sites. Well, at least they're getting up close to 5,000 square feet. Mm-hmm. There's 1,000 variables because there's so many. The ground's not square. The topology parts of it are all different. It's confusing, and you can't structure the thing very well. Well, I guess I really had my say, and that's just about it.
Okay.
Clearly, I don't like it. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's over there.
On the desk.
Oh. Can we get up there?
Can we have Nancy, I'm sorry, I cannot read this. Rozier, step forward from 764 Humboldt.
Hi, thank you very much for letting me speak. I'm also a neighbor. I live 2 doors down from the proposed property, and it is disturbing that the old house was taken down and that the lots were all of a sudden split up into 2 different parcels when there were no plans to build, nothing approved ahead of time. Seems to be somewhat disingenuous. I think that the thing that's upsetting to me is that we have a really unique neighborhood. Most of our lots are on 50-foot, 2-lot parcels. My neighbor across the street, Milton Trigonis, who couldn't be here tonight, commented to me today that when he went to build his house, he wasn't allowed to build on 1 lot. He was required to use the 2nd lot because the 5,000 square foot requirement. And I think that it's important that if we have a rule, that we stick with the rule. And if it's 5,000 square feet, then so be it. And if 1 house can be built on those 2 parcels, then so be it. There should be no variance in parking. There should be no variance in a setback. Our neighborhood is a unique neighborhood. It has our street. It has a variety of different types of houses. You split that lot into 2 37.5-foot square, or 37.5-foot widths, and then you put 2 exactly looking the same houses. You're in a different neighborhood. Maybe you're in a neighborhood where that conforms with the rest of what the houses look like, but that's not what our street looks like. Our street has many, many, many different types of designs. That's the beauty of it. That's the nature of it. And to ask and to allow it to be different than that goes against what the neighbors want, and it goes against what our neighborhood looks like. So no variance, no parking variance, no setback variance. Allow us to have the space and allow our neighborhood to continue to exist the way it is now. Build 1 house. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. We have no more written requests, but would anyone else like to speak to the matter? Please step forward. State your name and your address, please.
Good evening, Honorable Planning Commission. Joel Diaz, 7 San Diego Court. I am the real estate agent representing the buyer and the seller on this property. So I wanted to address some of the questions that came up. With regard to the erosion control, that was a requirement of the Public Works Department. It was tied to the work that was done on the property, and once a site like that is disturbed going into the rainy season, they require that erosion control be installed on the property. So all of that stuff that you see, the rolls and the silt fence, all that stuff was a requirement by the Public Works Department. There is no erosion problem there. They just make you do that once you disturb the soil when you go into the rainy season, just so that there won't be an erosion problem. The history on the parcels themselves is that sometime around 1969, when the law was changed, and thereafter, as I understand it, the people that own these properties were contemplating legalizing that lot, parcel 3, the 25-foot one, into a separate building site. And so by 1973, they had actually accomplished that. And they did that through the subdivision process legally. They went to the Planning Commission and I think the City Council and recorded a parcel map. And so that's what created a separate legal building site. And it's been historically that way since 1973. So that has never changed. It's always been that way. The actual house itself was predominantly on the remainder of land to the west. I think they must have had plans to develop it at some point in the 70s. They were thinking about maximizing the use of the property. But so that's where that came from. So there has been 2 building sites, legal building sites, since '73. It didn't just appear recently after the building was torn down. The building was torn down because the building sits too close to the property line, to the 25-foot wide lot, and it was advised to the applicant by planning that it would be a better scenario to just remove that. It was and build something new that would adhere to the setbacks. It was also really damaged, so it was a fire hazard, and it just made sense to remove it. There were large holes in the roof and had been left like that for years, where it had been rained on and leaked, and it was just pretty much not salvageable. So that's why the building was removed. I know you read into the record a letter from Wayne Hendricks, one of the neighbors, and I wouldn't ask you to read all the other letters into the record, but out of fairness, there probably should be some notation of it that I think you should have received at least a dozen email letters in support of the project. I know that 3 of the neighbors in the nearby area did send in communications in support of it. There was Michael Barnes sent one in. He's just up the street on the 800 block. 837 Humboldt also sent one in. Another down the street on Humboldt, the Boucher family also sent one in. And then there should have been 10 others, at least, I think. Do you guys?
We do have a list of that, and we will notate that.
Okay, so I just kind of want to point out that there are a lot of neighbors that are in support of this. And the reason why is because the feeling is that this is going to be a nicer development if they're more equal, if there's a little bit more equity. There's going to be more opportunities for articulation in designing the architecture. The buildings are going to be more separated, a little bit larger setbacks, and instead of that sort of monolithic building that we all know so well on the 25-foot wide lot, when people build the maximum building, we kind of know what that looks like. It's very tall, very monolithic, not much articulation, and that's because it's very narrow. It's only about 19 feet that they can work within. And in this scenario, we're going to have a lot more width for both buildings so that there can be articulation. There can be some nice features to make it aesthetically the home's nicer and more balanced. And so in terms of nonconformity, nonconformity can be a subjective thing. It just depends on your perspective. There are other criteria beyond the lot width and the lot square footage. There's also the general plan and the policy to encourage articulation and more separation, more balance. And so there are other factors that have to be determined. And when you look at the idea that you're going to actually have more parking with the applicant's proposal than you would with the current situation, this actually brings the parking more into conformity. So the nonconformity issue is subjective, and it depends how you look at it. So the way the applicant has it, there's going to be more parking, two garage spaces, 2 on-site spaces, plus the street widening and whatever new spots come as a result of that. So I think the applicant's attempt was to actually make it more conforming, and that's why they proposed it the way it is, where it's sort of just split down the middle. Let's see, I'm just checking my notes here. So the neighbor to the east at 790 Humboldt, in his letter, is requested that there be wider setbacks on his side, which is also part of the applicant's proposal. So in order to satisfy his request, it would be ideal to have wider setbacks in between his property and the applicant's property. And I think that would address that neighbor's concern with regard to the setbacks and having more separation. If we go with it as is, he'll have the least amount of separation possible. We go with the staff's alternative, it'll be a little bit better, but the best overall scenario is the applicant's proposal. So I don't think that that you can really apply the zoning code to this in an absolute way. I don't think it's really a one-size-fits-all scenario. You kind of have to look at it from a global perspective and see all the pros and cons. Just by adhering to one part of the code actually may not benefit the rest of the neighborhood, and it may not be in keeping with the spirit of the general plan. And I think parking and balance, articulation, those are the equitable things that a community strives for, that we need to fix the parking, we need to have more balance, we need to have more separation. And I think the findings that really all you need to find here is that this, by definition, is a standard. There are two standard lots, meaning they've been legalized either by parcel map or through some other government regulation. And typically, when you have two legal sites, you can do a lot line adjustment through the planning department. You don't need to come to a planning commission. It could be an administrative lot line adjustment when you have two legal sites. And in this case, that's what we do have, are two legal standard sites. They're not standard necessarily in terms of size and dimension, but they're standard in terms of legality and the fact that you can build a house there. So I think in making the findings, one could say that in any other normal standard lot situation, a lot line adjustment is allowed. But in this situation, it by special circumstance, it has to come to the planning commission and would ordinarily be allowed because it is a legal site. These are not illegal sites. And so it would be potentially depriving the applicant and the standard lot designation the inherent rights that it possesses under its definition of being a standard lot. That's all I have to say. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you.
You have any questions?
I don't.
Any questions? No, thank you.
you.
Anyone else from the audience? Speak to this matter. Please step up. State your name and your address, please.
Good evening. Kamelia Vodimirova. I live at Elfin Court at the Ridge. So one thing that I wanted to mention is I don't live in Brisbane
Sorry,
Central.
could you spell your name? I didn't catch that.
Okay.
Your name?
Maybe I can just write it down after that, or do you want me to spell it out now?
Could you spell it?
Kamelia Vladimirová.
And you're at the Ridge?
Yes, Elfin Court. So one thing that distinguishes central Brisbane and really makes it, I think, a great place to live is the beauty and the greenness of nature and trees that you see there. Even when you look at it from the park down here, you see these beautiful trees between the houses there. And looking at this proposal, the whole lot is 75 feet wide. So it obviously, the objective is to build two houses on it. And to me, it seems like putting two houses on a 75 feet lot would not allow for sufficient amount of trees and vegetation and maintaining the green look and feel of these properties. So what I'm asking the Commission to consider is the overall lot of 75 feet enough to put two homes on it, or should we really consider this as a place that should have one home so that it allows for sufficient amount of trees and vegetation on this lot, and we can maintain the beauty of nature and the greenness of Brisbane Central? Should we really be cramming multiple homes on a 75 feet lot? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Please step forward.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Hello.
My name is Dave Bostrom, and I live on Harold Road, and I'm the applicant. Anyway, I've actually spoke to the close neighbors, and the ones that I had talked to were in favor of having a balanced lot size. Anyway, because architecturally, the homes would look better rather than have one skinny house and one wide house. Anyway, the houses also won't be crammed together, as you've already discussed, or some of the other people have said, because the setbacks are going to be greater than they would if you had one narrow lot and one wider lot. Anyway, by the city standards, we should be entitled to get a lot line adjustment. And the road in front is very narrow. It's the narrow spot's about 17 feet wide, and if a UPS truck parks there, it's tight getting a truck through there. Anyway, if you put homes there, they're going to have to supply quite a bit of off-the-street parking, up to 8 spaces altogether. So that'll alleviate a lot of parking problems that we have here in Brisbane.
You said there will be 8 off-site parking.
Yeah, there'll be
two for the owners.
2 covered
right
spots and 2 on-site spots. So total of 8 with 2.
Okay.
2 equally divided lots. Otherwise, you'll end up with you're gaining 2 extra parking places by equalizing lots. Where if you have one narrow lot and one wide lot, you're going to eliminate 2 parking places. And, anyway, so I think that's what we really need here in Brisbane. It's more parking, it seems like. Anyway, I hope you'll grant us our variance there.
Well, how do you address the issue of greenery, the nature?
Well, there are some fairly large trees that are on the property now, and anyway, and we can plant more. That's not a problem, because there's going to be almost 10 feet between the homes. So, and then you'll have the front yards and the backyards. So there are large trees on the property now.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I don't at this point.
Not at this time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Excuse me, so I'm confused. So you're the present owner at this point? Okay.
Anyone else? Yes, please step forward. Name and address, please.
Certainly. Good evening. Luke Bouchard, 242 Monterey. I have a couple questions. The first one would be to city staff. The city staff concur that as is, there are 2 separate legally buildable lots on this property?
Yes.
Okay. The second question, just to confirm, is one of the 2 lots currently 5,000 square foot and the other less than that?
One of the lots is just over 6,000 square feet. The other lot is 3,175 square feet.
Okay. And the last question is there a process by which, for this zoning, from one compliant lot and one, let me rephrase. Is there a process by which a property featuring one 5,000 square foot or more lot and one less than 5,000 square foot lot could be combined to create 2 less than 5,000 square foot lot? I hope I got the question straight. Because it seems to me that there is a boundary at the 5,000 square foot quantity of surface area. And so right now, as is, if I understand correctly, one of the lots is at least 5,000 square feet. The other one is less than that. And both of them are legally buildable, if I understand correctly. And I understand that part of the desired project or the proposed project is to meld them together to create 2 lots. So you start with 2 lots, you end up with 2 lots. The difference is before you have one that's at least 5,000, the other is less than that. And if they are granted the variance, both lots would be less than 5,000 square feet. I believe that's what the desire is of the applicant.
So,
And is
sorry,
there a process to do that?
through the chair, the applicant's proposal would essentially, for the lot area, it would switch the conforming lot size from one to the other. So instead of 786 being over 6,000 square feet, it would place, and 788 being under 5,000 square feet, it would switch the conformity, so 788 would be right at 5,000 square feet and be conforming now, and 786 would become non-conforming. So it would essentially switch the conformity between those two.
Okay, thank you for that. So if I understood that correctly, with the proposed or a project by the applicant, there would still be one of the two lots that would be 5,000 square foot or more,
Through the chair, that is correct.
and the other would be less than 5,000 square foot. So there'd still be, I'm not sure that the term compliant is the correct term, but if we take the reference unit of a buildable lot that's 5,000 square foot, let me call that for a second compliant. Before and after, there'd be one compliant and one non-compliant lot, and after the same. There'd be one compliant and one non-compliant. It's just that the relative size of each would vary.
Through the chair, that is, the term we use is conforming and non-conforming, but in essence, that is the gist.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
May I just say one more thing?
Yeah, sure. Step on up.
Nancy Rozier again. And I just, honesty is important, and I live a door away from these lots, and I have lived there for 17 years. There are no big trees on those lots. There is one old oak tree. It's about 40 feet tall. It's smack dab in the middle of both lots. It will come down the minute anyone has to widen the street. There are larger trees that belong to Carol G., who wrote a letter, who is the immediate next-door neighbor. On the other side, Wayne Hendricks is one who opposes the variance. Carol G. also wrote you a letter, and Rory, it's a very small letter. She vehemently opposes it. Nobody's ever talked to me about whether or not I want equal or unequal, so I'm not sure who this man is talking to, but we are the direct and immediate neighbors. Michael Barnes is up the hill and around the corner. So in terms of the immediate neighbors who oppose this, you have letters from them. I'm another one, and there are no trees, so I don't know what the heck this guy's talking about. Thank you.
Okay. Please step forward.
Just wanted to clarify a couple points. So the middle lot line in the proposal can be shifted. So either lot can be 5,000 square feet. It's just that both of them can't be 5,000 square feet. The remaining lot can be whatever it is. I think it's 4,600 square feet. So it's pretty close to 5,000, but it's not 5,000. So right now it shows 788, the lot to the east being 5,000. But if we shift the middle lot line a little bit, the other one can go back to being the 5,000 square foot lot. So they're sort of interchangeable. That can easily be changed. The trees. So there might be some contention with the neighbors about where the boundary actually lies, and we could define that with some property corners. But it appears that there are two very large trees near the property lines, and we believe them to be on the subject property. There's one on each side next to each neighbor. There is also an oak tree that Nancy brought up towards the front middle, probably in the way. That's the kind of thing that we could replant. Some other oak trees kind of thing is normally how we do it in Brisbane. If a tree's in the way and it has to be removed, you just put back other trees. There's also a landscape requirement that the city has when you build a new house, and they will address different landscaping requirements. But I think, as the applicant said, he'd be more than willing to add more trees. I think that you could easily make that a condition of the approval, among other conditions that you could come up with as well. Again, is it non-conforming? Is it half of one, 6 of one, half a dozen of another, right? Is the cup half empty or half full? It just depends on your perspective here. Is this a better situation the way the applicants proposed it? A lot of people think yes. It's just even. It's equal. It allows for a nicer neighborhood. The other scenario, to leave it as narrow as possible, is very restrictive, very limiting, kind of spiteful, I would say. I think when you have immediate neighbors requiring it to remain very restrictive and narrow, that their opinions are probably biased and influenced by the proximity that they live right next door. If it was right next door to my house, I know I would have very strong feelings about it as well. So when you hear immediate neighbors feel very strongly about something, usually there are other biases at work. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just that they're directly affected by it. But as a whole, if you look at it, for the entire city, do you want to have sort of the one-size-fits-all mentality, or do you need to have some flexibility and look at really what's best and what's in keeping with the overall general plan and what benefits the community the most? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Lista Ford?
All night.
Lori Laxamana, resident. Again, I come back to the point, by moving the lot line to make it look like what they would like, who benefits the most? The people that build the two buildings are going to be getting more money, since one may be for living and one may be for sale, or maybe they're both for sale, or maybe they're both for living, whatever way you want to do it. One plan gives you two bigger, better houses worth more money, more profit. The other house gives two areas, one big one, one small one, but it does the same thing, gives you living for people to come live. And that's what a house is for, people to live in. You're letting the developer build more property, make more money. How come they get to make money? We can't add to our properties. And again, I see these other properties in town where they haven't been able to build, and so they could have two houses too, if they could move things around. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Lista Ford?
Hello, my name is Tammy Kwan, Tamiquan. I live at 301 Harold here in town, and I'd like a little rebuttal about the money issue. It's not about a money issue about how a developer is going to profit from how he's going to make two big homes and sell two of them at great profit. It's about what's right and what's fair. The bottom line is there is two lots here. There will be two homes built. It's not right to encroach upon the home on one property and make the setbacks so restrictive for the narrow lot. So the bottom line is, what is the right thing to do when you have a lot that can be reasonably split into two usable lots, buildable lots that will be easy to design and develop? So I am definitely in favor of the applicant's proposal. His request to divide the parcel into two equally sized lots is both practical and logical. It is also the best use for the future development of these lots. I think it would be prudent to grant this proposal to the applicant in order to promote uniformity and continuity in the design and development stages of both of these lots. I urge you to please do the right thing and grant the applicant the right to split the lots equally, that they will have a relevant design and development that doesn't need to be squeezed in you don't have to ask for special variances and setbacks. I think this would be the best proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Please step up.
Over these 50 years of living in the neighborhood there, it seems like some of these properties, after they've been improved, and that means to me having a house built on them, they stick with an APN parcel number. And that APN parcel number kind of holds the glue together that you don't go around subdividing these scenarios. Now, having said that, there's one other little thing, and I think maybe the Planning Commission can see it. We go back to the early 80s, and the fellow lives at 195 San Benito Avenue, and he's got 4 parcels. And these 4 parcels are as close to 10,000 square feet as you can get. That sounds like 2 sites. He still hasn't built up there.
Okay, it's time to close the public hearing.
Okay. Is there anyone else?
Okay, I make a motion to close the public hearing.
Okay, is there no one else? Okay. Anyone second?
All right, I'll second it.
Okay. Discussion.
All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Discussion, please.
I have a question for the staff. Number of times it was mentioned that 25-foot lot is buildable. How can it be when the requirement is 5,000 square feet and 50 feet? How did that become buildable?
This goes back to a discretionary permit in 1973, which went actually before the Planning Commission. My recollection is, Joel is correct, also to the City Council. So this was a discretionary permit. The permit record back in the 70s is not necessarily as robust in terms of the explanation as we might have today, but it is definitely that it was approved as a separate parcel. It has a APN, a parcel number that's separate from the what's now referred to as the 786 parcel. So they have 2 separate parcel numbers, even though there was a house built across. So,
but the thing is, the question I have is when you make the new requirements, 5,000 square feet and 50 feet, won't this lot will come under this requirement now? Because, or should be, is there any specific grandfather clause? Is there a grandfather clause there that they will not have to meet this? When we set up these requirements, 5,000 square feet and 50 feet, did we specifically excluded these lots when we approved
Right.
the new requirements?
Yes, the third bullet down on this, on the background. So 1969, Brisbane adopted an ordinance establishing the standard lot size of 5,000 square feet. Contiguous substandard lots that were less than 5,000 square feet owned in common were subject to merger. However, an exception established in that same ordinance was that any substandard lot created through a parcel map would be recognized as, so this was created through a parcel map in 73.
Okay, so that was for the 5,000 square feet and 50 feet.
The parcel map established the smaller of the lots. The other is conforming.
Okay. The other question I have is regarding the setback. So both of these lots don't have the setback requirements. Were they excluded also from these setback requirements?
The setback requirements would be as current. There was no special condition in that application for setback, so the setback requirement essentially defaults to the setback requirements for the R1 district as a whole, which is 3 feet for the 25-foot wide lot and 5 feet for the lot that's greater than 50 feet in width.
So 25-foot lot will have the 3-foot setback.
Correct.
And 5,000 square feet will have a 5-foot setback.
That's correct.
So the current proposal, with the current proposal, we are not in conformance with the setback in both of the lots, right? As far as the setback is concerned.
I'm sorry. Right. Yeah. Yeah. So at this point, there's no building on either site, so we have no setbacks established. But in terms of setback requirements, once a building is built on either side, it's going to have to comply with the current setback standards.
So the question I have is, if we approve this tonight, what I like to see is that we should not reduce the setback requirement, because that's very important for the safety. And I don't like to reduce it from 5 feet to 3.7 feet. As far as the size, 5,050 feet, the width, the idea of splitting into two bigger lots makes sense to a certain extent, but at the same time, we have to make sure that we do not compromise anything when it comes to the setback requirements, because that's for the safety of the people living there.
So just a point of clarification, there's no setback exception or variance being granted by the commission tonight. None requested, none being considered, none that the commission could grant. But are you saying you want to require a greater setback than the zoning code requires?
Whatever the zoning code requires, that's what the setback I want.
Okay.
And in terms of for these lots, if we're going to split it the way it is, then the setback should be based on the 5,000 square feet, not 5,000 versus 42, 44.
But that's not the way the zoning code is structured for setbacks?
Is it based on the 10-foot width, 10% of the width, or what?
Yes.
That's correct. So it's not tied to the lot area, but to the lot width. So whatever the commission decides in terms of granting the variance, the width would dictate the setbacks on each lot.
Okay. As far as the lot coverage and the floor area ratio, that's also a question here, right? They don't meet the existing requirement in terms of...
No, there's no buildings, so whatever is proposed will have to comply with the floor area ratio and lot coverage.
Okay, so in order to make it very clear, I think what we should do is we should remove all the stuff regarding the lot coverage and setback requirements, because it makes it look like that we are approving the whole thing, which we are not. We are just approving the area and the lot width. That's what we're doing, right, tonight?
That's correct. The table that was included was just to help the commission consider what are potential maximums under the code. So it's not.
Yeah.
It's this table doesn't grant any rights to the applicant.
So this table should not be there then, because when we put the table, it makes people assume that this is what it's going to be. So I think in order to make it clear, we should not include this table. We should provide only 5,000 square feet area and 50 feet. That's what we're granting tonight, right?
If it's the Planning Commission's wish to have less information to consider in future, I think
you guys agree with that, because this gives a kind of a false impression here.
Actually, I actually find it useful because it's titled under potential development and maximums, and then for the side setbacks it says 10% of width. So I think that
but that's 10% of the width is okay, but the problem I have is that they already mentioned 3.7 feet will be the setback according to the applicant, which is not true.
But it's under the potential development scenario. So for me, when I read it, it actually helps me to envision better.
Yeah.
Or perhaps it's a matter of how we all process the information.
Yeah, but what I want to do is I want to make it clear that we're not going to allow that. We want to keep the setback as close to the requirement as we have, 10% of the width. That's my opinion.
Well, since you're not granting a variance, that is a requirement. So you're not granting a variance to anybody's setbacks as part of this action tonight.
Right.
Okay.
So I was looking at 290. I mean, excuse me, I have the wrong day. 790, and they are closer to the lot, and so I was thinking that the applicant's proposal would be. So what you're saying is either way that there would be enough room. Is that what you're saying, Jamil? I'm
What I'm
trying
saying,
to understand your logic.
What I'm saying is that setback requirements, we should not give the leeway on that, because that's required for the safety, for the fire departments to get on the side and all that. So we should not reduce it as much, try to keep it within the required, 10% of the width. That's the requirement. The way it's listed here, it could be less than 10% of the width. So that's what I'm saying, that this gives a wrong message here by having the potential development here. We're saying that in potential development it will be 3.7 feet. What I'm saying is no, it shouldn't be. It should be 10% of the 42, 44. Okay. So that's what I'm trying to make sure that everybody understands here, that we are not compromising on the safety when it comes to the setbacks. As far as the other, the merging the two lots together and dividing into two, have you done anything like this before?
For clarification, so there's not a merger that happens first. It's the established parcels will have a lot line adjustment that moves that lot line adjustment over. About a year ago, the commission actually granted a variance for 685, 690 Sierra Point Road. This was two existing buildings where you had a lot line that ran through the house, you may recall. And the variance was granted to allow the lot line to jog around the existing house, and resulting in a less than standard width on that lot next to that house. So there is some precedent here.
Okay. Currently, the two lots are listed here, right? Not three.
There are two lots that the city recognizes as buildable lots.
Because originally there were three, I guess?
Back in early 1900s, there were three.
Okay. Okay, the lot. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay.
So just so I'm clear, could you remind me again? I know that the standard is here, but how do you define certain things within the standard to help guide the commission? So it says here that any variance granted shall be subject to such conditions as will assure that the adjustment thereby authorized shall not constitute a grant of special privilege inconsistent with the limitations upon other properties in the vicinity and district in which the subject property is located. So the recommendation by both the applicant and by the staff, the alternative recommendation, both of them meet this requirement, this standard.
Yes, if the Planning Commission sees that they can make that finding for the applicant's proposal or for staff's proposal, that is up to you. If you go to page H111 in the staff report, that takes that finding and puts some specificity to it in terms of how it applies to this particular lot. So you have two findings there.
So for the Sierra Point Road, the 685 and 690, that is also dependent on the case itself, right? The special circumstances that's referred to
That's correct. It
That would
had
be-
its own special circumstances.
within its location.
That, right, it applies to the special circumstances regarding the lot.
Are there any other parcels that are also grandfathered out like that? Where we require 50 feet, but they are only 25 feet?
Well, there are a number of parcels throughout the city that have 25 feet as the width. And so, yes, there's a number of parcels that have that as a condition.
But they are in the 50-foot zone.
The entire R1 district is a 50-foot zone, so yes.
So those parcels, they don't have to come before the planning commission to raise it, right? Because they are grandfathered out for 25 feet.
If they were to want to do a similar sort of scenario, they would have to come to the Planning Commission. The only reason this is coming to the Planning Commission is because they're asking for a lot line adjustment, which imposes a new non-conforming condition. So any of those other sites, if they had a similar sort of issue, would have to come under the current regulations for a variance.
But there are 25 feet lots that are non-conforming that are still safe. Right, I'm looking at 796.
Yeah.
Is it because that owner was not a contiguous owner?
So 796 has one advantage that this site does not have, and that it has a 10-foot wide buffer with the public right-of-way on the side of it. So it doesn't have quite the same crowding issue necessarily. The circumstances of how that was built years ago, I don't have those details, but it does have a little bit of a different circumstance.
So in terms of precedence, this would be the first precedence in this neighborhood, correct?
In this block, the Sierra Point sites are not too far away from this.
But
That you granted about a year ago.
But would their special circumstances be similar? Are they similarly situated?
I'm trying to understand your line of reasoning here, how this affects your findings on this particular matter. The case Ken referenced went through a separate public hearing, a separate set of findings. So I'm trying to understand what exactly you're trying to get out of that finding and that set of hearings that is relevant to your deliberation tonight. If you could clarify that for me.
Sure. So I'm trying to establish an understanding of the idea of what special circumstances means. So in other words, you really can't compare apples and oranges, right? So even if you were to grant a variance, it would really depend upon the special circumstances that are involved in each via the variance standard on H17 and then the second standard on H18. The two findings, meaning each finding is going to be specific to the case at hand.
That's correct.
That's what I'm trying to
Right.
establish.
That's correct. There was a question about precedent on granting variance for lot line adjustment. And so, yes, there's a precedent, but there's different circumstances for each application. So, so in a broad sense, yes, there's a precedent. In terms of the details of each application, they stand alone.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
We promise. Yes, we will.
I'm sorry, could you speak in your mic a little more?
Are both of these lots in conformity right now, right? Because one is 25 feet, the other one is 50 feet. So
One
in terms of the area,
lot is
both
conforming.
Both of them are buildable and doesn't require any. They don't require any variance, right?
If the developer had chosen to build a house on the 25-foot lot and comply with zoning provisions, and the larger lot, that's correct. There would have been no variances. There'd be no hearing before the Planning Commission this evening if they had chosen to build it on the 25-foot lot and other lot as currently configured.
So just to drive the point home, that would mean that buildability is not an issue.
Correct.
Okay. Any other questions? So as we were stating earlier, we do have a list of the responses from neighbors throughout the city. And I'll go ahead and read that and let you know. And I guess we can make this is public because Ken has made this packet available up front. So if you would like to check, you're welcome to do so.
It's in the binder up front, yes.
Yes. So on February 26th, Adriana Rosas and Paul Allen from 837 voted in favor, or sent a letter in favor. On February
837 Humboldt.
837 Humboldt, yes. On February 25th, Cameron Johnson, no address, wrote a letter in favor. On February 25th, Dan Brochure at 678 Humboldt wrote in favor. On February 25th, Patrick Connolly, 310 Klamath, is in favor. On February 24th, Cassandra Richmond at 691 Sierra Point wrote in favor. On February 24th, Bonnie Boswell at 7 San Diego was in favor. On February 24th, Robert and Sharon Giannini at 381 Kings was opposed. On February 24th, Aaron Bushna, sorry if I'm messing up your name, 691 Sierra Point was in favor. On February 23rd, Alice Limpkin, 317 Kings, in favor. On February 23rd, Ali L. Batniji, 811 Humboldt, in favor. On February 23rd, okay, I'm going to really mess up this name, but Cuauhtemoc, Perez, at 820 Humboldt, in favor. On February 23rd, Rich Vaciano at 490 Kings, in favor. On February 23rd, Gerard Yee at 401 Herald, in favor. On February 17th, Wayne Hendricks, 790 Humboldt, opposed. On January 21st, Michael Barnes, 815 Humboldt, in favor. And January 22nd, Rosemary Wilbur, 770 Humboldt, opposed. So that's our record up through February 26, 2015 for this issue.
Okay, what's your pleasure?
Ready for, what do you think?
Why don't you go first?
You want to go first?
I'm still thinking, so any of you guys can go ahead.
Okay.
I need to think some more.
Okay. So I guess we can boil it down into three things, at least in my mind. One, buildability. Two, variance. And three, setbacks. Three has been established as not something that we are even considering. It's a moot point. So the setback will be 10% of whatever it is the lot size becomes. And that comes part and parcel of the decision of number two, which is, should we or should we not grant the variance requested as per two proposals? One, the applicant's proposal, and two, the alternative proposal made by the staff. Hearing both sides, or hearing of the opinion and advice, I tend to feel that having the balanced proposals, or the proposal that is balanced for both sites, even though I understand it reduces, you lose some of the benefits that the staff has made, probably aesthetically would fit more into the neighborhood. And in terms of buildability, I don't think there's an issue. Legally, it is what it is. The assessor granted that parcel number. It was bought, and there is a history clearly of the legal support that allows the applicant and the buyer to do with his parcel as he or she would wish. It boggles my mind, though, that laws were put in place. People were not aware of what their rights were. I would hope that this would be something when we move forward, that our homeowners are more aware of what it is that they have a right to claim and what it is that they have a right to do with their parcels. But that has no bearing currently on this application. In regards to the public opinion, the majority public opinion of the neighbors in this neighborhood, despite the fact that is correct, if you look at the map, 90% of the map indicates that it's a dual parcel homes, so 50 feet, not 25 feet parcels. However, that was a decision made by that homeowner. And I would hesitate to take that away from the current homeowner who has complied with all the legal ramifications and requirements as he should have done. So again, buildability is not an issue. It's just a matter of Proposal A or Proposal B. And I would prefer Proposal A as made by the applicant.
Yeah, I think I agree with you too. If we had to grant the issue before us is, should we stick with 25-foot house, narrow house? And in my mind, that will not look aesthetically, that will be really difficult to build in such a small lot. So this is a good compromise. And I looked at the staff versus the applicant proposal, and there's not much difference in terms of one over the other. But I still prefer that applicant's proposal is very good in terms of balancing the two lots. So I make a motion to go ahead and approve this variance per
I think
the
that
conditions
Carolyn
of
may
approval.
have. Yeah. Can we hear if Carolyn has anything?
She can.
Yeah.
She can,
can I just
talk about that.
Yeah. And in addition to that, it's aside from the aesthetics and the fact that we want to have a common urban design within the neighborhood, for me, what tipped me over to the other side more so between Proposal A and B was the fact that 790 is closer to the property line, as mentioned by the applicant. And to have it narrower actually caused me to worry about the issue of the retaining wall. So, Carolyn?
That is exactly the reason that I wanted, of the two, I preferred the applicant's proposal, because 790 is very close, much closer to the property line, and I think that it's probably would be better for a neighbor who is really not happy with this anyway. I understand wanting to have one home here, but the property was split into two, and it's probably better. I think the applicant's proposal is the best one. So I'm for moving forward with this.
Okay.
Okay.
Would you go ahead and make your motion?
Okay, I make a motion to approve the variance V-3-14 with the suggestion to modify this project description page on H1.1.17, remove the rest of the potential development stuff and just stick to the whatever the variance we're granting tonight.
I second that.
Did you want, Ken, did you want to make
just a point of clarification. So I think what we'll want to do is bring this back to the Planning Commission, recognizing that you've approved it here, but we'll redraft the findings and conditions of approval. We'll essentially modify conditions A1 and 2, which refer to keeping the lot size for 786 at 5,000 square feet and the width. So this these conditions will reflect the applicant's proposal, and as well as what you've stated in terms of your findings. So we'll come back to this on consent calendar at the next meeting.
So we don't have to vote on this tonight?
You do need a vote.
Okay.
Yes.
So
Yeah, I want
So
to
I
make sure
made
we
a-
had that clarification
Right,
before we know.
definitely,
So we know
yes.
what we're voting on.
Right.
Right. So all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No abstentions.
Okay, can we take a 5 minutes break?
Yes, is that okay?
You may want to indicate the appeal process.
Oh, yes.
for the-
Yes, thank you.
Sure, we'll go to appeal.
The appeals process. Anyone may appeal the action of the Brisbane Planning Commission to the City Council not later than 15 calendar days, 10 calendar days for subdivision and sign applications after the Commission's action. An application form and fee is required to make a formal appeal. For additional information, please contact the Community Development Department at 415-508-2120. We're at recess.
didn't see one.
No, I own property.
Called Adrian Howard.
Hardly. Thanks. I think. All right.
I'll take that.
Dave will take that. Okay, we ready? All right. Let the fun begin. Moving on to new business. Item 1, public hearing, 875 Humboldt Road, variance V-4-14, use permit UP-5-14, and setback exception modification SE2-14, variance, use permit, and setback exception modification to allow construction of a new home approximately 35 feet in height, where 30 feet is the maximum height permitted, to provide 3 on-street parking spaces where 4 spaces are required, and to allow construction of a stairway within the front yard setback approximately 24 feet in height, where 20 feet in height is the maximum height permitted. Jerry Cool applicant, KMI Development, owner, APN 004-441-250. Ken? No. Is this yours?
I'll be giving the
Oh,
general.
sorry, Julia.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. The applicant is proposing construction of a new home with attached secondary dwelling unit on this downslope vacant lot of approximately 7,366 square feet in size. There would be 3 on-site parking spaces, 2 of which would be covered, 3 off-street spaces on a private driveway within the public right-of-way, and 2 on-street parallel parking spaces. The applicant also has included road improvement plans for this portion of Humboldt Road, which would widen the paved right-of-way to 28 feet. This would accommodate a 20-foot travel lane and 8 feet for parallel parking on the same side as the lot in question. Also proposes installation of a 4-foot sidewalk. As stated and as highlighted on the table in front of you, the proposal would comply with most of the development standards in the R1 district, with the exception of the front yard setback, which in this block of Humboldt Road, we would take the average of its 4 foot 2 inches. As proposed, the southeast corner of the home would maintain a 2-foot setback from the front lot line. The middle segment of the building would reach a maximum height of 35 feet 10 inches from natural grade, which does exceed the maximum height of 30 feet, as well as a stairway within the front yard setback. Typically, you can have stairways in the front yard setback so long as they are no more than 20 feet in height. In this case, the stairway is 23 feet 4 inches. In regards to parking, the use permit is required to allow only 1 on-site parking space for the secondary dwelling unit, where 2 on-site spaces are required. It should be noted all required parking spaces would be accommodated off-street. I think I've reviewed this already, so I'll go on to some excerpts from the project plans. This highlights the area of the home that would encroach within the front yard setback. As you can see, it's limited to this relatively small portion at the southeast corner where the lot line skews in relation to the right-of-way. And this elevation shows the portion of the building. You can see that middle segment, which is 35 feet 10 inches from natural grade. You'll see that the applicant, part of the proposal, includes some fill supported by retaining walls in 2 areas. And the way our code measures maximum height in cases where the finished grade results from fill, you measure height from natural grade. You can also see here the stairway right at the front lot line. In order to approve variance, the Commission must make the findings which are enumerated in the staff report. I won't review them here. Staff's comments regarding these findings. In terms of special circumstances applicable to this property, there is a significant drop in grade from the Humboldt Road right-of-way to the front lot line, about 15 to 20 feet. Again, the lot itself is fairly steeply sloped, about 35%. So these two features, coupled with the required road improvements to the Humboldt Road right-of-way, present a unique challenge to meeting the maximum building height here without significantly reducing the floor area of the home. The other homes in the immediate vicinity are of similar scale and massing to the proposed home. The strict application of the height limit and the front setback requirements would result in a home of significantly lesser floor area than surrounding homes due to lot coverage limitations. And there is precedent for approving height variances in the neighborhood as listed here in the staff report. Staff has recommended a condition to require side setbacks in excess of the minimum 5 foot required, as shown in the applicant's plans, to ensure that the grant would not be that of special privilege. The use permit findings, again, enumerated in the staff report. In regards to general plan consistency, there are several policies and programs that advocate safe on-street parking, studying the impacts of off-street parking on site design. The draft housing element, which you will be reviewing later this evening, also contains programs and policies to revise parking requirements for secondary dwelling units in particular. What's been recommended, not yet approved, would be 2 off-street parking spaces for secondary dwelling units. This proposal is consistent with that recommendation. In terms of not detrimental or injurious to the neighborhood or city, again, the second parking space for the secondary dwelling unit would be provided off-street within the driveway. This has been found to be an acceptable condition by the Commission in past cases, as listed here, for secondary dwelling units. Strict enforcement would not be required, nor would interference with traffic or on-street parking take place, as again, all required spots would be provided off-street. The Humboldt Road improvements would also enhance traffic safety and circulation and capacity of the roadway compared to existing conditions. And in regards to the setback exception, these 3 required findings, again, the special circumstances impacting this property are particularly the steep drop in the grade from the lot to the right-of-way. Essentially, this means the stairway cannot be the height is directly tied to this drop in grade, rather. The street level view of the stairway would be limited to the landing and the required safety railings, so it really would have minimal visual impact. In conclusion, it's staff recommendation that the Commission conditionally approve the project by adopting the attached resolution and subject to the findings and conditions of approval contained in Exhibit A. I'll take any questions if you have any.
Thank you. Carolyn?
I don't have any questions for the staff at this moment.
Jamil? One?
None.
Dave?
I have no questions. I have no questions at this time.
I just have one, and I'm just wondering how the Public Works Department decided to do the curb cut from 18 feet to 30 feet. Can you explain that, please?
While I can't vouch for the city engineer's reasoning, he has authorized it. This has been something the applicant has proposed prior to submitting his planning application, and the city engineer has already approved, and I do believe it's within the purview in the code to allow the engineer to make that provision.
Just a general question before we open the public hearing. Have we been routinely allowing larger than 18-foot curb cuts for new development in Brisbane lately?
Not to my recollection. I know we had a, 60 Plumas, which had a couple, you reviewed that as a design permit, a triplex, which had a couple curb cuts side by side, which exceeded that. So that's, again, a little bit of a different situation, but I think for preservation of on-street parking, I think Randy tends to hold pretty strict to that 18-foot maximum.
So
So it's special circumstances where he'd go
okay.
outside.
All right. Thank you. All right. No other questions for staff?
No.
Then we should open the public hearing. And I don't have any slips in front of me. Are they somewhere?
All of them pertain to the previous matter.
Okay. All right. Is there anybody who would like to speak?
Hi, my name is Jerry Cool. I can explain the 18-foot curb cut. I sat down with Randy. We looked at what amount of parking we could get with an 18-foot curb cut. It basically came to 2.5 cars. So it made sense that we could easily, and if we made it to the 30 feet, it allowed us, and it made it more practical for people to get their cars onto that driveway. Then they're going to use the driveway rather than use the street. So we actually gained 2 places on the driveway for sacrificing a half a space on the road. Yeah. That's how we came up with that.
Okay. Thank you.
Other than that,
makes sense.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
Good?
Yeah.
For now.
Okay.
All right. Nobody has any questions for the applicant?
None.
No?
No.
Not really.
Okay.
Very well presented.
Yeah.
Well, then, okay. And would somebody like to make a motion to do something about this application? And I'm kind of stunned.
Close.
Close the public hearing first.
Yeah.
All right, we good? Okay, so no other. All right, didn't close the public hearing yet. Thank you, Jerry.
I just, my client actually changed his mind. He now wants to subdivide into 3 properties and build 3 houses.
Excuse me, I've never done this in 5 years. Sit down. Sure. Okay, well, with that, I'll make a motion to close the public hearing. Anybody want to close?
Second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Discussion?
Well, there's quite a number of variances here, but they're very logical to the site. The site is very steep, and I think it was just well thought out.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
Agreed.
Until now, when Jerry said he's going to divide into 3, so.
Well, that's a different application. I don't have that before me.
I don't really have any problem with the application.
I think it's very important to realize that we are considering the constraints for this kind of sites.
Mm-hmm.
In the past public planning commissions, we had the issues where we were really, stick with 30-foot height recommendation. We will not allow any variance. But I'm happy to see that we are looking at the real situation, and now we are compromising and allowing, recommending the 35 feet in this particular case will be okay. So I'm talking about my own experience.
Sure. No, I get it. Dave?
So I was denied with more than 30 feet. So, but those were past days anyway.
No comments?
No, it's well thought out, good design. All the special circumstances seem right on point. So happy to see that.
And
the important part is also that they are going to improve the Humboldt Road, make it a little wider, because right now it's very narrow at not a lot of places. So that's a plus also.
I guess I do have a question for staff, just as a general lay of the land on this. This is a really steep lot. How are we handling drainage on lots like this when we're putting a large building on a block of land that, and I don't understand drainage, so excuse me for being a little ignorant on this question, but We're putting a large building on a very steep lot, and there's going to be drainage. Could you just explain that to me a little bit, somebody? Julie, is this one yours? You pass?
I think the city engineer can.
Yeah, the city engineer will typically do that, and the general rule is you can't concentrate. You have a natural right to, if your property drains a certain way, you can maintain those patterns. You typically can't concentrate drainage in a way that is harmful to the downstream acceptors or receptors, and that's what the Public Works Department will do to ensure that any drainage, leaving the site isn't going to be an adverse impact on the downstream receptor.
Okay.
And I think the city requires all the drainage water to be, drained into the surface water, right? Doesn't go into the sewer line. San Francisco is the other way around.
The only comment that I'm going to come back to this curb cut. I never quite understood the reasoning for our 18-foot curb cuts, and the explanation for why this was widened to 30 feet makes a lot of sense to me. I think I've seen, especially on my street, that's why I asked the question, we have a lot of 18-foot curb cuts, which means that there are a lot of cars that are parked on the street that could otherwise be actually parked on private property. So I'm happy to see that we've loosened that regulation or come to some reasoning about that, and I would hope that moving forward we can look at that a little more as well. Because if we've got more on-street parking, we've got more off-street parking, that's going to alleviate a lot of issues for everybody. That was my only comment.
Did you vote? Oh, we have?
No, I was just talking.
Yeah.
Okay, any other comments?
None.
All right, what's your pleasure? Planning Commission?
I am for the project.
Somebody like to make a motion?
I want to make a motion to approve variance V-4-14, use permit UP-5-14, and setback exception modifications AC-2-14.
Do you have a second?
That.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Appeal process.
Okay, that was a bit of a surprise, I'm assuming. You're welcome. Good night, thank you.
Read the appeal.
Do I have to do it after each one?
I guess
thought
that's
we
what
do
they
at the end.
asked for.
I'll make the announcement at the end.
Okay.
That's typically what I do. Okay, I will read the appeals process at the end of the Planning Commission meeting, which pertains to every item that was brought up this evening. So we're moving on to our second public hearing, which is the draft 2015 to 2022 Housing Element General Plan Amendment GPA-1-14, a negative declaration, City of Brisbane applicant citywide.
Yes, thank you. Tonight's meeting on the housing element is for the Planning Commission to hold a public hearing and provide its recommendation to the City Council for adoption of the 2015 to 2022 housing element and the associated negative declaration. This is essentially the culmination of a process that was started in 2013 to update the previous housing element for the new plan period, and that's to comply with state law. Since the Planning Commission has already reviewed the draft element in detail and provided its recommendations to City Council, and the element was largely left by City Council as recommended, there was some changes, but largely as recommended. I'll be fairly brief tonight. I'll go over the background and status, the review of the major components of the element, highlights the City Council's and the Department of Community Development, the State's Department, HCD, their review, and then I'll turn it over to the Planning Commission for public hearing and their recommendation. In terms of background, the housing element process, as I mentioned, began in 2013 with the city joining 21 elements. That's a CCAG-sponsored collaborative of the San Mateo County jurisdictions. 21 elements help facilitate the update process through data collection, providing technical guidance, and as a clearinghouse for best practices in the update. The Planning Commission then conducted 8 study sessions and 2 public hearings from early 2014 to September 2014, at which point the Commission provided its recommendation to City Council to accept the preliminary draft of the element for submission to HCD for review prior to formal adoption. City Council then held 3 workshops and meetings in October and November, and with fairly discrete modifications, then authorized its release to HCD for review. HCD requested some clarifications and changes to the implementation deadlines and some of the programs, and then provided its approval late last month. So tonight's meeting is to provide a public hearing and recommendation for adoption to City Council. Note that we are past the January 31st deadline at this point and into the grace period for adoption. In terms of the major components, this is an update of the previous element, which was adopted just a few years ago, with the most significant changes being to the proposed zoning to accommodate the RENA. The draft element includes residential and mixed-use overlays at the southeast edge of Crocker Park on 5 sites along Park Lane and Park Place. The RENA includes both a carryover from the previous element of 210 units and the current allocation of 83 housing units for a total of 293. Most of these are to be addressed through the proposed affordable housing overlays. That overlay zoning is required to be completed by the January 31st, 2016 deadline, so the city will need to act quickly with its work program to make that zoning happen within that time frame once the element is adopted by City Council. So some highlights of City Council's and HCD's review. City Council upheld the Planning Commission's recommendations for zoning overlays in Crocker Park to meet the RENA. The overall element was largely unchanged, but there were some fine detail level changes by City Council which have been outlined in your agenda report. Perhaps the most significant of these was that the review for the possibility of allowing secondary dwelling units at the Northeast Ridge, that provision or program was eliminated from the element. For HCD, following Council's authorization, the draft was released to HCD for review, and they also had some fine detail level clarifications. And so among these was to expand the definition of dwelling in the municipal code to include employee housing for 6 or fewer persons. Also, the previously proposed ongoing timeframes for a number of the programs were made more specific in the plan. HCD provided its approval letter on January 23rd. Finally, as detailed in the agenda report, there was a mission essentially that HCD that was within Planning Commission's and City Council's draft, but for some reason was omitted in HCD's review. So that's highlighted in the resolution and is something that you've already reviewed. So in addition to making a recommendation for adoption of the housing element by City Council, the Planning Commission must also make a recommendation regarding the environmental initial studies conclusion that a negative declaration should be adopted. In conclusion, staff recommends that the Planning Commission recommend to City Council adoption of the negative declaration and draft 2015-2022 housing element. If you have any questions for staff, be happy to take them.
Dave.
I have no questions.
I think we've gone through this exhaustively.
You have no questions then?
I have no questions.
Jamil?
No.
I don't have any questions. There was just something, if you wouldn't mind clarifying in case people are listening. I've heard some misinterpretation of what was going on relative to us identifying the RENA housing numbers. Could you just explain that for people who may be here and don't understand how we came to those numbers, or for people at home who may have some misinformation on how we arrived at those numbers? And I'm speaking specifically to the mixed use. Not all mixed use could be counted as one. Could you just go over that really briefly, please, Ken?
Sorry. So the city has its RENA that I outlined. I'll go back to that slide. So we have essentially 293 housing units for this plan period, including the carryover for the lack of zoning in the last plan period. And a significant number of those need to be in the moderate to very low income categories. And the state's rules essentially dictate if you provide a site with at least a density of 20 units to the acre in a size that would accommodate at least 16 units, they will count that towards the low and very low income categories. Now, that is with the maximum that it sets of no more than 50% in those low and very low income categories, maybe in mixed use. So if the city zones for more mixed use than 50%, sure, we include those numbers, but in terms of how they're counted on those income categories, we may not be able to count them all if we're over zoning. So we have to have certain sites that are residential only.
Thank you.
Welcome.
No more questions for staff. I'll.
The only comment I want to make, and I have done that in the past also, every year we go through this housing element, and the problem is we never meet any of that. Last several housing elements, we identified like 75 sites, and we were not even able to do 10. So again, it's an exercise that we have to do every year by the state requirement. And I see how many agencies are involved in coming up with this. But the net result is there is no mandatory requirement that you must meet. All it is we should have 293, and I wouldn't be surprised that we won't even do 20 of those. And there is no penalty or nothing involved. It's just basically every year or every 5 years or whatever this cycle is. I think it's every year, isn't it? Or every. So
this cycle will be an 8-year cycle with adoption.
So last 8 years, we didn't even meet our quota, and I think the same going to be the case here.
Isn't the law to identify, not to build?
Right. So we will this housing element will obligate the city to provide the zoning, but the city can't control the market in terms of what can be built.
So it's a good idea, but it's never materialized.
Well, it's an exercise, correct?
It's an exercise, and how many agencies are involved?
Yeah,
you
but
look at the amount of money we're spending on this to come up with this plan.
It's state law, though. We have to.
And I would say that there is, it is an exhaustive exercise, but there is good that comes out of it as well.
Which is?
Which I would say that the zoning of these sites, it provides the city with an opportunity to look at what's really best for the city. And I think on a detail level, there's a lot of programs and policies here that will be good for the city.
That's part of the planning, right?
Right. You have to be prepared.
Well, I totally disagree with what you said, but that's the way state government works. And there must be about 40 agencies working on this throughout the state, ABAG, and you name it. And they all are involved, and staff time is involved in coming up with this. But there is no teeth to this particular plan. All it is an exercise for the city to come up with a plan. There might be some good coming out of that, but I don't see it being in this position for last almost 12 years. All I see is just same exercise every time it comes before us. So,
That's the law.
the law.
That's the law. Any other questions for staff, or shall we just open the public hearing here? Are we good?
I'm good.
With that, then I'll open the public hearing. I do not have any slips in front of me. Would anybody like to speak on this topic? Mr. Miller.
Miller. Come on down.
He's been waiting patiently for.
You've been patiently waiting all this time just to talk about this, Ray? Oh, okay.
Oh, good.
Very interesting evening. Thank you.
Sorry we weren't very entertaining.
No, you were. And I appreciate that. First of all, I want to make clear that I'm speaking as an individual in this instance, not for the council. And I checked with the city attorney, and I said, can I do that? He said, sure. So, okay, here I am. I have some concerns about the present configuration of the housing element. And I expressed these concerns at the council meeting. And in fact, the vote at the council to move on to the state agency actually was 3-2. So it wasn't exactly an enthusiastic vote at the council. And that's because a few of us had some concerns about some of the implications of the configuration.
Mm-hmm.
And so the plea I'm going to make is that I really would like you to maybe reconsider that. The part of it that bothers me the most, what I'm concerned about, there are 3 major properties for the housing overlay along Park Lane.
Mm-hmm.
The one furthest west is the biggest and would have potentially the biggest apartment building. But it's right in the middle of the industrial park. It happens to be immediately adjacent to the same property that people had all the objection to over freight forwarding. And they were worried about the pollution and going up to the school. And now we're at least potentially talking about putting a very dense apartment building, not up the hill on the school, but right adjacent to that building. Potentially. We know it's a lot of numbers and so forth, but I mean, it could happen. And so then some of us were thinking, well, maybe we could do a little reconfiguration to at least avoid that particular disturbing potential consequence. And so we did some reconfiguration at the council workshop, and we came up with another configuration in that same area that produced sufficient numbers to meet the RENA requirements. And essentially what we did was to keep the Brisbane Village and that adjacent warehouse and the open property, which could be built upon, the one that's owned by the Teachers Union Retirement Fund, in mixed use, which is what it is, or at least in the current housing element. And then we put some, high residential only, which is what you're talking about. You got to have a certain percentage of that in order to meet the, the low and moderate requirement in the law. And that would be on Park Place. So we created a different configuration that at least took that big building, potentially very dense apartment building, out of being right in the middle of industrial park and not exactly a place you'd want people to live unless you take away, all those warehouses and trucks and so forth. It's just not a very good place for housing. And the estimation of at least 2 members of the council at that meeting. And I just wanted you to kind of think about that again.
Okay. Can you be a little more specific? So what were you thinking? So you were thinking of keeping the mixed use 25 Park Place and 4143 Park Place?
Well, there's, and Ken will have to help me with this because they did the calculations at the council workshop.
Oh, okay.
And so we met the residential requirement by putting the Brisbane Village Teachers Union property and the warehouse behind that, which is all one big parcel, and back into the mixed use. And that produces some residences, but it doesn't give you the residential only. And so then we changed one of the buildings along Park Place to residential only. Right, Ken?
Yes, I recall essentially that you were looking at expanding into 125 Valley Drive and remixing that. I don't have the numbers exactly now with me tonight,
but we did come up with the numbers that met the requirements of the law, and what it did, from my point of view anyway, was to take out of play that big building at the end of Park Lane that to me is very problematic as a potential source of dense housing right in the middle of the park. So we did come up with another configuration that worked. And so I guess all I'm asking is that, would you be, kind enough to at least take another look at that before you pass it on?
Okay.
That's kind of my request.
Is that proposal, is what you're talking about is in our package here? Or?
I don't think so.
No, it isn't.
No, it's not there at all.
Yeah,
That's why.
no,
That's why I
isn't there
came.
at all.
Because it isn't there at all.
So is there
But
any
it was discussed and it was looked at and it was feasible.
Well, as a matter of fact, I have a comment to make, and that is that we had kind of looked more carefully at Bayshore, and and decided that actually was not going to be a particularly comfortable situation for future Brisbane residents as proposed, and then we did change it to this. So if the part of the council has an idea that would be potentially more comfortable for the citizens, then I welcome the idea to actually look at that.
Yeah, and excuse me, if you look at the TAP report, I don't know whether that's been here or not.
It has.
It hasn't. Okay. Anyway, the suggestions made by the group of professional consultants on the Crocker Park, they have a different sense of configuration for the Brisbane Village open lot and warehouse, and their idea was to put the commercial on Bayshore, and then put their residential along Old County. Mm-hmm. So it would deal with that issue, but it would still all be mixed use, because you'd still have all those different uses in that large parcel. Anyway, so all these things are feasible and they're in the works and they're been studied and they meet the requirements. And anyway, I'm just asking if you at least take another look at it.
Do you have
decide still you want to stick with what you got, but I would appreciate your looking at the option.
We like to look at it, but we don't have it in front of us.
Yeah.
So
So we would have to continue this to
You'd have
another
to
meeting.
continue it and come back to it at whenever, next meeting, hopefully.
Yeah.
We do have some concerns over timing. The adoption of this element is supposed to be adopted by the end of January. There's a one-time extension.
Until when?
I thought it was till the end of May.
I don't believe. Let's see. We're going to have to find that out.
I heard it was the end of May, so if that's the case, then there's time.
Yeah, there would be time.
I think one of your slides did mention about the extension date.
Mm-hmm. I think there's time.
You have,
if you do it expeditiously, of course.
Yeah.
do we have the documents from the workshop, or what form are they in right now?
I don't. Well, from the TAP workshop, that's a printed report. From the different configurations that I was mentioning that came up at the council meeting, I don't think that's in any official report, but it was done. The calculations were done, so it would be easy to put it in a report.
Good idea.
And did the calculations.
Ah, okay.
Well, personally, I think that considering that we did reconsider Bayshore because we didn't feel that particular configuration was going to be healthy for our citizens, right. I really feel that we should take this into consideration. I don't know what the rest of the Planning Commission feels.
Yes, at least we should look at it to see what the details are.
Yeah.
John, did you have a...
We want the best for our citizens.
Certainly, it looks like the end of May. My worry is we start making substantive changes. We need to go back to HCD. We're going to be in very major risk of not making our deadline, but if that's the Commission's prerogative, I feel we kind of collectively, through the Commission process, dealt with the sort of the iteration that's being discussed. It was discussed with the council, but certainly it's your prerogative. If you want to look at it again, we can come back.
Okay.
If you do go through this in the next meeting and then agree to change or not to change, whatever, if you have to go before the approval process, do you think we'll meet the deadline made? How long it took for the turnaround time?
I think they have a 60-day, HCD has a 60-day window.
So next meeting is in March, so we still will still be able to.
Well, I'm not going to forward this based on a planning committee. We'd have to go to council because this is then again contrary to the. We'd have to take this forward to council again, back to HCD, and then we'll see where it goes. So, I mean, that's fine. It's your prerogative to do that, and we'll. But there's not a lot of time, and I'm saying we don't have a lot of time in this process to meet our deadline. But certainly, if you want to continue it to the next meeting, and we'll hold together the materials that were presented to the council and make the council minutes available to you. You might want to watch the DVDs or of the various council workshops that this was held. I would think you're going to get a lot more out of that probably than even looking at plans necessarily, because again, I think these are all iterations that you've seen in some way, shape, or form. So I think if you're okay, so we can do that. That's your pleasure.
I think we can continue next meeting.
Right. We'll try to make a decision next meeting.
Would anybody else like to speak? Thank you.
Hello, everybody. I'm Dave Hogan with DCT. Can we just take, I know you guys all have a Google Earth image. Yeah, just throw it on the table and get it on the screen. And could you point to what you're talking about? Just kind of, just really quick, just flesh this out.
Yeah, the problem is that
I don't think we have
the maps that are in the housing element.
I don't think we do.
Cut off the area. Yeah,
it's just the 3 buildings.
Yeah, you can figure HE2, but it doesn't really help you because it cuts off the area in question.
Right.
That's the problem.
Step before the microphone, please. You're going to speak. Yeah.
I think it'd be helpful if we throw that up there, and you, council, I guess you're speaking personally, but just point around a little bit, because
we can.
I think what I heard you say is everything on Park, everything that's owned by CalSTRS stays the same, and then you're going to switch around Park Lane with Park Avenue, or Park Place, correct?
Park Place.
Okay, so if you could you mind just indulge me and just kind of show me what you're talking about, because I don't have any idea.
Can I have my package back, please, Julia? Oh, no, when you're done. I'm sorry. Do you need that? That's fine. Sorry. It's up. Just move it in a little, because we're only getting partial view.
Yeah, I have it on the monitor.
We're on a monitor.
It's not on.
It's partially on the monitor.
Right.
That's better.
Zoom in.
Zoom in and put on your glasses. Okay. Can you move it up?
Keep going. Yeah, larger. That's good. That's good.
I can see it now. Can you see? Oh, thank you.
Want, but
yours package or mine?
So these are the 3 sites that are zoned, plus these 2. And Ray, I'll let you go from here.
So what we were suggesting for consideration, the building that strikes us as particularly really a part of the Crocker Park and not really good for high-density housing is this one right here.
It's 145?
That's 145.
Okay.
Right. Okay. These 2 would stay with the overlay.
Okay.
And then we would put another housing overlay over here instead of mixed use, but this would all be mixed use, which would be added.
So that would be
which was in the old housing element.
Yeah, that's true, yeah.
That was up for consideration, wasn't it?
Thank you. I just wanted to see if this was complex or pretty straightforward, so appreciate it. That's all.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay.
So what you're talking about is 25 and 41 and 43? Is that 25 and 41, 43, instead of 145? I believe that's what you're saying.
What were the reasons of the other council members not to agree with this change? Do you remember?
To be honest, one of the reasons was they were reluctant to go against you all.
Oh,
since when?
No, but that was the reason given, and
oh, really?
So
Really?
that's one
I'm
of the reasons.
surprised.
That, to be
Scary.
Really?
perfectly honest, that's one of the reasons I've come this evening to ask you to at least consider this, so that it gets to the council. There's some, that the options have been looked at.
Oh, gosh, okay.
Really?
So, I mean, that was one of the reasons given.
Really?
By one of the members. Oh, yes. And another member of the council thought it would be great to have high-density housing so close to the school because the kids wouldn't have far to walk. That was stated. And that kind of bothered me because, I mean, there was all this concern about, the kids getting the pollution from the trucks from the immediately adjacent property, and now you're going to put, people that get there with kids, it's very high dense. I mean, that's the biggest building, so it'd be the most housing. But there'd be a lot of pollution there unless we do something about that, in the meantime. So it struck me that just didn't make any consistent sense. If you're worried about kids in school, why wouldn't you be worried about kids 24/7? Anyway, that was my personal concern.
Okay.
So I hope the council will do the same thing with other decisions we make.
Right. That's a surprise to me, that's for sure.
We are very scary people.
That's right. Anybody else?
First day I feel happy to be a planning commission.
Right, we're still in a public hearing. Is there anybody else in the public who would like to speak on this matter? I don't see any hands, so we'll close the public hearing and let's have a discussion.
Yeah, I think at least I like to see this to be continued and get the numbers from
Right.
and to see what differences are, so we can make a little better decision based on what Council Member Miller presented.
You don't think that information was already presented to the City Council during deliberations when they voted on this?
It probably was, but we were not party to that.
We didn't see it.
So
there was a 3-2 vote.
The request is made to us to
Right.
reconsider and decide if you want to review it
you
again.
won.
And I'm saying that request should be granted
The request for
to look at the alternate.
Well, we do have an appeals process for everything that we do. So regardless of what we do, anybody can appeal our decision. So either way, it can be appealed. We spent how many months looking at this, and then it was approved by the City Council. And and we looked at all of this stuff. So.
Can I just clarify, Ken? So was that scenario presented by Ray today? Was that presented as part of our discussion?
I'm sorry, was that presented as part of your
Discussion.
When we were making a
During the
decision
month,
earlier?
yeah, prior to it going to the City Council.
I believe so. Ray referenced all the way out to, I think, the NCRO 1 district, which I think the Planning Commission discussed all the way out to there as well. I know the Planning Commission discussed 125 Valley Drive. So I think all those were part of that previous discussion.
I recall they were as well.
And what are you saying?
What am I saying? It's not my decision. This is
Right.
five people making a decision what to do here.
Well,
give
my
a comment.
decision is that we should look at it because,
And I think we
it
already
makes
looked at
makes a lot of sense to see what will be the impact because of the close proximity to the the forwarding, the
I
trucks
agree.
and all
I
that.
think we already
and
looked
very
at it.
very close. I don't think we looked at it that carefully.
I think we looked at it very
I don't think so, but maybe I'm wrong.
No, it's your
But
opinion
in
versus mine.
any event, I think my opinion is we should look at it again, but you may decide because we all have to
Right.
agree to that, and
Well,
whatever the majority decides, that's where it's going to be.
well, it can be appealed anyway, which means that it will go back to the city council and they can look at it again with an appeal, which would be my preference of how we do this, because otherwise we're opening up this for a whole new situation that we looked at very carefully. We did not come to this decision lightly. We've been looking at this for a long, long time. So either way, it could go back to the city council as an appeal to look at.
Mm-hmm.
Right,
Right.
right.
Well, I'm always for looking at the best situation for our citizens, and I think that two members of the council were concerned about whether our citizens were going to potentially have problems with this area, and I know that Council Barnes had some of the same kind of thinking years ago when he was on the council, that this would probably or potentially would be a problem for future citizens. So I think we should look at it again.
Well, two of us are recommending that we should look at it. Let's hear from the other two commissioners.
Dave?
Yeah, I think we should look at it. I'm just curious why we didn't come up with this ourselves, because we did look at a lot of alternatives. And I don't know, maybe we didn't think about shifting the parcels in this manner. So I would like to review the numbers that Ken put together, and I'm kind of curious about the impact if the high density building did go up. What the impact would be on that area regarding pollution. I mean, we looked at that.
Right. Well, what's the alternative use for that particular building? Is all industrial, correct? So that's trucks in and out. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, you're talking about 145.
Correct.
Yes.
That the existing use, yes, it's a
All truck.
commercial warehouse building.
Okay.
Right.
So it's all trucks in and out. Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
It's currently under a tenant improvement for a rental company.
Okay. Good.
I seem to recall that we had this conversation, but I thought it was part and parcel of a larger conversation those many months that we were working on this.
Right.
And I think Ken verified and Karen verified that that is correct.
Correct.
But I also do see that a good number of the planning commissioners want to review that because they feel that it is a serious enough issue that Ray has reminded us to think about, to rethink. Not that it was not thought of before, I think, but now that we understand that there's these major concerns and it does affect our population, I am okay with moving forward and looking at the recommendation and the numbers that actually happened at the workshop, which we did not have at that time.
Right.
Does that make sense, Ken? Right? Because we didn't have access to that data. So
Right.
the way when we were talking about it, it may have been more theoretical, it may have been more extrapolated, it may have been a different way to look at it, and I would not mind looking at that information the way it was presented or discussed at that workshop.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay. Which would require us to know about trips in and out with the truck traffic versus automobile traffic, I'm assuming.
You're not going to have that kind of data in 2 weeks. We're not generating new technical information. We don't have the capability to do that. If you want to continue it further and, we take our chances with this, that's fine, but we're not going to generate new technical data.
Okay.
But was that data provided at the workshop that the
No.
City Council was? Okay.
So the best course of action would be to continue this for 2 weeks for you to bring more information back to us relative to this topic, correct?
What I'll be doing is bringing back the materials that were presented to the council in the 3 workshops.
Okay.
And if you choose to watch and that's probably would be my suggestion, is you'll capture a flavor of what was brought up if you listen to the DVDs of those 3 meetings, I believe. But yeah, we'll bring the materials that were presented.
Is it possible to have those DVDs sent to us as well?
They're available online. You can just
Download.
stream them. Yeah, actually, you don't.
Okay, if we get the dates.
Do we have the date of the workshop?
We'll forward those to you.
Okay.
Okay.
So one last question. Was what was presented or generated on the workshop, was it a viable solution?
Yeah, the numbers, there are a number of iterations of how you get the numbers to work in various parcels and various configurations.
Right. So okay. I just wanted to hear it from staff.
All right. Then I guess we're going to make a motion to continue this close the public hearing, and continue this to the next meeting. Is that correct? All right. Who would like to? Go ahead, Caroline.
No. I put away my agenda.
You put your stuff away. Okay, Dave, you want to make a motion? We take a vote to, I think everyone's made it clear you want to do this. So, okay. Who would like to make a motion to vote to continue this public hearing to the...
I'll go ahead and do it, might as well.
Go ahead.
To continue the draft 2015.
Can you speak up, Haji? I can't hear you.
Pardon me?
I can't hear you.
I think your microphone.
Mic is off, I guess.
There you go.
Okay. To continue the discussion for draft 2015-2022 housing element to the next meeting of March. When is the next meeting? March 4th. March 12th.
Yeah. I second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Thank you.
So moving on to item J, items initiated by staff.
Nothing from me.
Nothing? Okay. Item K, items initiated by the commission. Any subcommittee updates?
No.
Well, I have still one outstanding concern regarding the, response getting from the city, and I think Council Member Miller knows my position on that. That anytime we suggest something or we require some action from the city, we never hear. And one of the concerns was the help in turn that is in front of my house. And the last week, another big truck got stuck, and we were there for 2 hours. And one of these days, somebody's going to get hurt. And I brought this up about more than a year ago, and still no action. I was told that there's a traffic committee will look at it, and I haven't seen anything from them either. So again, my request is that city should have some kind of a process to respond to the concerns that the citizens bring up. It could be whether we can't do anything, denial. It can be that these are the reasons our hands are tied. But to be a complete silence and no response at all, I think that's not appropriate. And I think that goes with the Planning Commission also. If we have some concerns and we have to bring it up if the citizens raise some concerns, we should bring it up, whether it's no matter how difficult it is to agree or disagree. But I think it's our duty as a civil, I call myself civil employee here, to be upfront and bring at least response to the inquiry. And I'm not too happy with this, and I guess I will continue to bring this up in future meetings.
Have you made any suggestions about that?
My suggestion is that there should be some kind of the calendar should be established that if somebody received a complaint or brought the complaint in the city council meeting, it should be noted that this is the date that person complained, and this is the date that we have to submit the response to that, and there should be some kind of a plan that, we're going to do it in 1 year, or we're going to do it 2 years, or no, if we cannot do it, here are the reasons. So at least the person who brought this up has some satisfaction that his requests were not gone on the deaf ears. And so I don't know why city doesn't have it, because most of these agencies do have some kind of a plan like that, where if staff puts it in the calendar, that's in year 2005, Karen bring this matter up, we are to respond by year 2010. So at least we have some kind of a timeline to see that where it's going. But no response is really, to me, doesn't. City is not doing their job. If that's the way they want to conduct the business, I think it's not acceptable. And I think there should be a process should be established. And I don't think it will take that much staffing to do that. All it is a timeline. And in any job or any project, everybody sets a timeline, right? So I don't know why is it difficult for
There's
this.
2 channels, at least that I know of, where you can report issues like that. One goes, I think, to city council, one goes to the county, that then comes back to the city. Am I right?
But the problem is we don't get any response back. It probably goes to the council, like I brought this up many, many times, and I don't get any response from the staff or council or nobody, as to what's going to happen, whether they're going to do it or not going to do it, or why we're not going to do it. So that's my concern, that for 2 years, no response, and so I don't know how many of these complaints the city is not responding.
And the next city council meeting is when? We should go.
I brought this up in the city council meeting 3 times already,
Okay.
And I think Ray is a witness to that. And I was promised that I will get some kind of a response, but nothing, nada.
Did you talk to the city manager?
If I talk to their bosses like mayor and city council, then they are the authority, right? Mayor is the one, and city council is the one. The city manager works for them, so they can direct the city manager what to do, what kind of program to establish. So I don't think it's my job to go to the city manager and complain to him.
Okay.
I brought this here today because since you are in the audience.
But he's not here. He's only here as a resident.
As an individual,
He's not
so
here.
he can see my
All
frustration.
right, since we brought that up, I do want to thank the city for having put up some reflective somethings on Sierra Point. That is making a big difference at that turn. I think they don't quite have it absolutely right, but it's better.
So you know not to drive on the wrong side of the road down there, is that what
I
you're
try my
talking about?
best.
Yeah, right. No, it's very confusing.
Actually, the current city engineer is pretty good about those things.
Yeah.
He did bring a lot of signage and all that, so I had to give him, appreciate what he's doing. So I think that's correct.
All right, are we finished for tonight?
Yeah. You done?
I'm done.
Okay, Dave, you have any subcommittee?
One brief update for the Sustainability Committee, where a workshop's being formed for the interested commissions and committees on our progress, key performance indicators. So stay tuned.
Yeah, I want to make one more comment. I was in Mountain View, and I looked at 3 projects that's been going on in Mountain View area, and I was surprised to see that all of them, they require platinum, not the gold, but platinum standard for lead, which is, is interesting, because a lot of times the contractors come and say, oh, we're doing the silver and gold is more than enough. But in Mountain View, 3 buildings, they are all platinum. And I think for the Bay Lane project, we may have to consider look at the other cities, what they're doing.
Right.
Okay.
Got it.
Any other comments from the commission? Any items you wish to discuss? Done?
No.
No. Okay, then. Moving on to item L. Selection of Planning Commission officers for the next year. What is your pleasure?
Well, I think our chair should be Commissioner Vaughn.
That's what will be my suggestion also.
All right.
That we should hand over to Ms. Doe.
Vice Chair Doe?
Yeah.
Dave?
I'll go with that.
And I'll go with that. So who would like to make a motion? Do we make a motion on this?
I will make
Oh, we
a
do?
motion.
I haven't done this one before. Make a
no.
motion to appoint Commissioner Van Doe as the new chairperson of the Planning Commission for the 2015 to February 2016 period.
Right.
And also we have to nominate the vice chair.
Right?
And that will be, my recommendation will be Mr. Reinhardt.
I'll second that.
Great.
Is this one motion? Or are we making a motion for the chair and the vice chair? We don't make a motion, we just do it. So we just say this is now done?
We vote.
We vote. Okay. So on the 2 separately or together? Okay. So I would like to make a motion to appoint Vice Commissioner Van Doe as the new chairperson of the Planning Commission and Commissioner Reinhardt as the vice chair for the 2015-2016 year.
I second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Anybody opposed? All right, before we leave, we'd like to adjourn to the regular meeting of March 12, 2015 at 7:30 p.m. And I would like to read the appeals process. Anyone? Sorry?
We have to make a motion for adjournment too.
Oh.
Do we?
All right, let's make a motion to adjourn to the regular meeting of March 12, 2015 at 7:30 p.m.
I second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
So, anybody may appeal the action of the Planning Commission to the City Council not later than 15 calendar days or 10 calendar days for subdivision and sign applications after the Commission's action. An application form and fee is required to make a formal appeal. For additional information, please contact the Community Development Department at 415-508-2120. Thanks, and good night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.